just have a quorum.
Okay, Mayor, you could start.
Welcome to the regular Board of Trustee meeting for Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. Is there a motion to open the meeting? Trustee DeRozzi, second. Deputy Mayor Casal, all in favor? The meeting is open. Let's, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Governor has extended his executive order on having remote meetings. The instructions have been attached to the Board of Trustee agenda. However, I will read them. There are two separate instructions, one for virtually attending this meeting and how to view it, and the other one is how to virtually attend the public hearing and the courtesy of the floor. With regard to how to view this meeting, the meeting is being streamed live on the village's YouTube website and via Zoom by either video or phone. You can follow the instructions on how to do that on the agenda. The instructions for the public hearing and for courtesy of the floor. If you are participating via Zoom, either by phone or video, you can raise your hand and we will call on residents in the order in which they do so. In order to raise your hand, you should click on the icon labeled participants and a column appears on the right-hand side. At the bottom of that window is the raise your hand button. For people calling in by phone, you can push *9 in order to raise your hand. We will let you know it is your turn by either calling out your name or your phone number. As usual, please keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Before we start the meeting, I just want to comment about the storm and our response. I issued a statement the other day. I just want to again thank the village staff, DPW, Ed, Jen, Steve Trezza, everybody for all the efforts that they've done throughout this powerful, crazy storm. We've been in contact with Con Ed every day, including Saturday and Sunday. I've spoken to the county executive. I've spoken to Mary Jane Shimsky. I know Ed's been on a number of conference calls every day with Con Ed and Altice and Verizon to try to resolve this situation. The good news is that as of now, 37 customers are without power in Dobbs Ferry. So that's a big improvement. We've done everything we can with Con Ed, and we will make sure that those 37 people have power as soon as possible. I will write to the Public Service Commission, and I will write to the relevant politicians as well to let them know of our experience. As someone who was out until 10 o'clock last night, I totally get what everyone was going through, the amount of food that's been wasted, the work that's been interrupted in our daily lives. So I just want everyone to know that the village has worked without without sleep really to get this done. So I want to thank you all, Ed, Jennifer, and I don't know if Steve's on here, Rick as well. So the village hall was without power. We were on a generator. The hospital was on a generator. The library was open so people can charge, be cool, and get internet access. So I think everyone's come together to help all our residents. And I just hope that some good can come out of this from how our feelings of meeting with our neighbors. I know I've spoken to my neighbors more in the last 7 days than I have before that. So, it's been an experience. So having said that, we will continue to provide updates as this goes along.
Fire department did a tremendous job also, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes. I knew I was going to forget people. So the fire department, again, the ambulance crew, Liz, Jeff, everybody, I want to thank everyone for their efforts. With that, I'd like to open up first presentation, which is regarding the parking permit system. And I think that's going to be the chief. Is that correct? Or is that Jeff?
It's Rick and it's also Jeff and it's also Lex from Park Mobile, who I'm also going to promote to a panelist now.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, we have a quick presentation for you regarding parking permits and a parking app. A lot of this certainly took effect because of the COVID-19 pandemic and efforts to try to minimize contact that the public has with both the police department coming in to pick up permits as well as touching meters. So we just wanted to potentially give them a different option in regards to, Jen, if you can move to the next slide. So, like I said, part of this would be we want to move our in-person sales of parking permits to an online format via the village website. And then the second part of this would be a Park Mobile app, which would be contactless, that allow people to potentially park at the meters in the business district and potentially expand that to the waterfront and the other municipal lots here in the village. Jen, if you can move to the next slide. So again, and I got a lot of help from this with Elisa and Jeff as we worked on this, but these are just some of the basic reasons, why, again, was safety. For the application process and the payment, reduces the amount of people coming in. We've got a lot of steps when people are doing their in-person purchasing of permits, cash that's coming in through the PD has to get filed back in the back office to go back upstairs. So we're kind of trying to streamline that, as well as the convenience, communications, and again, for Jeff, with the securely depositing and reporting money to the treasurer's office. So for the first part, as far as going online, we would access that to the village website. So Jen, if you could move to the slide 4. Village residents would be able to access the various permits that the village offers through the Village Adopt Fair website, through permits and licensing. And basically, it's just, they're going to just follow step by step. So, Jen, if you could go to the next slide, and this is an example working through Municity, which is something that the building department has already utilized. But from that main site, permits and licenses, they would move into and clicking on parking permits, and then they would get a new page that would explain the various permits we have and the fees and schedule and the information how to apply. Once they click from here, this would set up through the Municity interface. Again, that's has been used for quite a while through the building department. Jen, next slide. The applicant would register through Municity/City Squared, and from there they would then make the actual application to get the permit from the navigation bar. This actually leaves the village website once they register to City Squared. Jen, the next slide, please. They would then, you could see there would be like a drop down. In this case, we'd have like a central business district non-resident, could be commuter pass. Again, it would be depending on what the resident was looking to pick up. They would then follow the instructions, filling out the application, including vehicle registration. Next slide. And then they would upload their documents. So once again, like we usually are looking for registration or the driver's license, we would determine what we want from the resident. They would upload their, say, registration information, as long as it shows a Dobbs Ferry address. They would then move on to the online payment system, and then they could pay directly through there instead of having to write a check to the Village of Dobbs Ferry, like they would do in person. Next slide. After that, they would get notified if the payment was accepted. We would also get notification and the information from the applicant that they have filled out. We would process the paperwork. And for this year, we recognize we would still have to hand out a physical sticker. So we would make that collectible at our window. The applicant would stop in, give us the information, their last name, and the desk officer could hand them the sticker for this year. My hope over the next coming years, maybe we could go to a digital format. We'll have to continue to explore that, but I would like to see this kind of get online first, make sure that this works before we, potentially change, either moving away from stickers where it's all online and, digitally we would be able to determine who has permits. But we would make the collections Monday through Friday, business hours, 7 to 3. They would collect it at the desk, and we could try to get that, hopefully, if with your approval, as soon as possible, to try to get permit sales back into place for the village. So again, this was just one opportunity to limit the interaction with the pandemic still out there and some of the concerns that it may be back, that residents can at least get their applications or get the bulk of the process done online and with a limited stopping into headquarters to actually get the physical sticker. From there, Jen, the next slide. The next thing, and again, this is stuff that probably Jeff could probably speak about as far as, with the point of sales, and he has a better access to see money coming in through the online version versus the check that's handed to us that we have to process. That still has to go upstairs, and then there's a greater lag that we're just trying to close so that the monies collected are certainly more accurately represented in more of a real time. So that was kind of the hope of working through Municity to make this happen. If this works out well, Jen, can you go to the next slide? We could potentially expand this to some of the other permits that the village has, like the alarm permits could be done through this system. Building permits could be paid online, and potentially even tax payments could go online, so that residents don't have to come in person. They could do that through this system as well. So I'd like to see if we could get this working properly before we potentially expand into some other aspects that this could work with, if that makes sense. If we move into the next slide after that, the next potential upgrade that I was looking to bring in is a Park mobile app, and that is being able to pay at the meters via mobile app in lieu of cash. So that will, it helps patrons. They don't have to touch these meters. This is a parking mobile app that is used in multiple cities around. We do have a representative of Park Mobile on tonight. He'll be able to kind of potentially answer any other questions, but certainly along the line are the Yonkers, Croton, New York City. So residents, if they're coming to and from, this is something that they're familiar with. So it's not, it wouldn't be unusual for them to pay by phone versus having to look for quarters to pay for the meters. And again, why are we looking to upgrade, Jen? The next slide, please. Same thing. Safety, contactless, easy use. Residents can pay online through their phone. It's convenient. They can add money to the meter if, say, they're at a 12-hour meter and still in the city, and they initially thought that they would only be down for, say, 5 hours. They can pay and increase the, they can cover that meter while they're out. There's a wayfinding section that helps, particularly out-of-towners, find Dobbs Ferry parking lots, which we've talked about, that direct them to 99 Cedar, the Oak Street lot, et cetera. And certainly one thought that I had going forward, and again, I would like to phase this in, would be a potential cost savings, as we do pay wireless fees on these meters. And with some of the meters that maybe are not heavily used, one of the thoughts that I was exploring, thinking outside the box, is either going away from some of the meter heads where we could band a section and we could still reserve them for certain parking permits like the Central Business District, resident, non-resident, but we could potentially make them, if you don't have that sticker, those would be just you pay by your phone. And certainly I'm not, potentially not in the main business district, but maybe some of the offside streets. This may be a way to save some of these smaller fees of the wireless. You know, we could also potentially add that into the waterfront park as well, utilizing the kiosk from 99 Cedar. These are things that we could explore later on, but I still just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention as we move along. Jen, can you go to the next slide, please? And even like I said, one of the things would be work this in phases. So with your permission, if this is something that you're interested in, we bring in the Park Mobile app use. Let's get that, see how that works, get our residents and our guests comfortable. Park Mobile, they would provide all the signage. And if that works, we could potentially look at phase 2, where we remove some parking meters. Like I said, you know, there's some spaces that are predominantly utilized by Central Business District holders. And so they, you know, like the blue meters, yet we're still paying a wireless fee, and where we could potentially ban that, where spaces that are free could be patrons utilizing the Park Mobile app. So there's some savings there. And as we go into the next slide, as far as the Park Mobile, you know, as far as the cost, we have a credit card fees, and then there's a cost to the user that gets passed on that is, I guess, kind of standard with these parking fees. If Lex is available to maybe kind of expand on that, if that works, Jen, could we get Lex to kind of touch on what they offer and what expectations could be?
Absolutely. Lex, you could share your screen when you're ready.
Okay. I'm going to go to just a quick couple of slides here with you. Give me 2 seconds. All right. Can everybody see my screen all right? Just give me a thumbs up. All right. Fantastic. Thanks for having me this evening. My name is Lex Blum. I'm the regional sales manager here at Park Mobile. I oversee all new sales in the Northeast. And I do a lot of work in the tri-state area, working with communities, municipalities, universities all around to help deploy our mobile pay services. So with that said, I'll just go to, one thing I wanted to touch on and highlight is the signage that we're able to provide to the village free of cost. Included in that 30-cent transaction fee would be the cost of signage that we would provide. And we do all customized signage. So aluminum, 12 by 18 aluminum signs, 1 by 1, 2 by 2 parking stickers that would actually go on the meter heads themselves. We would even have, the village's logo if they'd like, just to further have that partnership branded together, just so people know that this is, between both the village and Park Mobile. And we can get very creative with any other types of signs that the village would want. And to touch on what the chief said, our services are free to the village in the sense that there's no upfront cost, there's no CapEx. The only fees associated with using our platform are those credit card processing fees, which are standard. We provide all of the marketing, the setup, the hosting fees, everything that comes along with deploying our services are borne onto us. There's no, hidden or recurring costs, anything like that. And we're deployed in a lot of other communities in the area, such as Ardsley, Elmsford, New York City, where we're available at over 80,000 spaces. So one of the great features about our platform is the network effect. So those who are traveling to and from either New York City or from surrounding communities, even those in Connecticut, such as New Haven, Bridgeport, Danbury, We're also available in Amerenik and some other communities nearby. They're able to just use one platform to pay for their on and off street parking needs. Another highlight that I'd like to make is our map feature, and I will, give me 2 seconds and I will go back to this in here. Yep. So this is a screenshot of the user flow. So somebody downloads our app. There'll be certain zones throughout the village, whether that be on street. Usually each lot would have each off-street lot would have their own zone. Someone would select or enter that zone number. They would, click how much time they're paying for parking, whether it's 2 hours or 10 hours. And if it's an on-street meter and there's a 2-hour max ordinance, by village code, they would only be able to pay for 2 hours of parking. They wouldn't be able to pay in excess. They'd click proceed to checkout. They can, view their parking transaction, make sure everything checks out. One great feature is they are able to toggle between the different vehicles that they might have. Households has 2 or 3 vehicles. They're using a different vehicle on that day. They're able to easily switch between that vehicle so they don't get ticketed. They're able to start their parking session from there, and they'll have that parking countdown timer on the next screen. From there, they're able to extend. And this is one of the great things about this platform is you're able to easily extend. So if you're, in a meeting, you're at a restaurant, you're able to easily click that extend button, and you'll be able to, instead of having to go to the meter, feed it with coins, you're able to just do it from your phone. You'll get parking alerts that you can set at customized times. So 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And they'll be in the form of email, text, and in-app notifications. I think the chief touched on most of the other things that we're able to highlight. And with that, I'll cut it off. But of course, if there's any questions, feel free to ask me.
So that basically, I appreciate. Thanks, Lex, for the information. That's just a quick synopsis of the 2 thought patterns that I had in regards to trying to make it easier for people to acquire parking permits and potentially park in the business district and some of the off-street lots. And that's just something that initially that we've been discussing over the past few months, trying to get this put into place. The app is compatible with our parking enforcement, so ComPlus. That would all seamlessly integrate with parking enforcement, and certainly potentially as we look forward into hopefully 2021, trying to have everything set up and in place. And that's basically what I have in regards to the two potential projects. I don't know if you have any questions, or otherwise I'll just cut it at that.
This is awesome, Chief and Jeff. Thank you so much. This is like the best presentation I've ever seen.
Jeff, do you have anything you want to add to this as far as fiscally?
Yeah, I like the fact that we could potentially limit, reduce some of the communications fees we have with those parking meters. And I like the fact that there's less people handling cash, and they don't have to do that down at the police department.
Lex, we'd want as many people as possible to use this. And, I'm sure you guys decided that 30 cents is, for whatever, is a sweet spot. Do we have any say if you are looking to increase this rate going forward in the future?
Yeah, so our standard terms and conditions, that rate is locked in for the term of that contract. The only time that we would increase fees is if the village increased their fees as well. So let's say, it was $1 an hour and you all of a sudden went to $5 an hour. That would be the only time that we would increase our fees. Otherwise, they'll stay the same. And from, we've been in business for 10 years and some of our clients have had the same fees since starting with us.
And it's 30. Is there a minimum that people need to book if they're using the app?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that capability is actually up to you guys. If you wanted to have, say, a 2-hour minimum in-app use, you could do so. It really, there's some customization that you guys would, you have your say in. But to us, it doesn't matter. If you wanted to have 15-minute increments, you could do that as well.
And if it was a 15-minute increment and it was 25 cents they were trying to pay, they'd have a 30-cent charge on that because it doesn't matter how long.
Correct. And that transaction fee is only charged one time per transaction. So whether it's 50 cents that they're paying or they're paying $5, it's still going to be that 30 cents.
Got it.
We have to change our meters, or you can do it with the existing meters?
We sit on top of your existing infrastructure. So the single space on-street meters that you currently have, we would, I showed you a couple examples of the signs, the decals. We would have those placed on them. And essentially that enables mobile app parking. And then in the off-street lots where I think you've got some pay stations, we would have larger decals placed on the sides of those machines. And, same situation, those would have a zone number associated with them, and that would enable mobile app parking as well. There's no changes that you guys need to make. We already have that integration done with your enforcement provider, ComPlus. So enforcement officials don't have an extra step to go to enforce paid parking with Park Mobile. It's just like if someone paid at a meter or if somebody paid on an off-street lot, they would go about that process the same way.
And can we set it up if we want to have different prices in different areas?
Yeah,
Price parking program.
Yeah, your fees and what you charge in terms of parking rates are set by you. We have no say in that. The only thing that stays standard across the board is that 30-cent transaction. And like I said, whether that's on a 50-cent parking fee, $1 parking fee, $5, it's going to be 30 cents every time someone uses our app.
So
sorry, go ahead, Larry.
If I could just make sure we understand the math, a 15-minute slot that now would cost $0.25 would essentially would cost the 55 cents for somebody who used the app. Is that correct? That
is correct. And in that instance, when you have 25 cents for 15 minutes, what our clients have done in the past is they usually limit it to say, an hour worth of parking. That way someone can only pay for, say an hour of parking in the app at a minimum, and they'd be charged, starting at $1.35. That way it doesn't, our transaction fee isn't exceeding the parking fee that they're about to pay.
And
right.
How is the fee? Go ahead, Jeff.
It kind of piggybacks with the way the meters are now. That's why the meters are $1 minimum for a credit card transaction, because we do actually lose some revenue based off of the credit card fees.
But the meters can still be used with cash for people who only
Correct.
want to have 15 minutes. They can just throw a quarter in the meter.
Correct.
And Lex, can you explain to us how the 30-cent fee would show up on your phone? Does it, in other words, how would they see the 30 cents? Would they see it on the phone before they push?
Yeah, you know what? Give me 2 seconds and I'll show you on this screen right here. I'll share my screen again with you.
Just to make sure people aren't going to be surprised.
No, of course. Yeah, so just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. All right, great. So right here underneath that price on the 4th screenshot, it says includes transaction fee. This is just a screenshot, 35 cents. You guys actually have a slight discount just because of some of the discussions we've had in the past at 30 cents. But it says it right here, includes transaction fee of, it would say 30 cents. And then once they click start parking, they'll get an automated receipt to their email, and it'll show them the breakdown of fees. So it'll say the parking fee and then also the transaction fee.
Is there any can you operate this like from any distance? So say you pay for a meter by cash and then you're in a store and you find that you're going to be longer. Can you then, if you have the number of the meter head, can you then activate this from, a couple of blocks away?
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, if you've started a parking transaction at the meter with coins, you're asking if you can then say extend with Park Mobile?
Start with Park Mobile.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you start a session with Park Mobile, you'll always have the option to extend that parking session as long as it falls within your current ordinances in place. So if there's a 2-hour maximum in a certain area and somebody's already paid for 2 hours of parking, they're not going to be able to extend. It's going to lock them out, and they'll either have to move their car or they'll, the other option is they can actually move it and, use the meter, but, they won't be able to do it with Park Mobile.
For the signage that you were saying that you guys can provide, what is our, what can we get out of that? What kind of signage?
Yeah, so I'll flip to the screen again real quick. So the signage that we're able to provide, this is a key piece of any deployment. This is how we really build awareness, and people understand once they pull up to a meter, they pull up to a parking lot and are about to go pay at a pay station, they say, oh, Park Mobile is accepted here because they look at the sign and they see it. They recognize the brand, especially in the tri-state where we have such market penetration. They're able to easily recognize that it's available. And like I said, all of that signage, all of those costs are borne onto us. We provide that to you free of cost. The only thing that the village would be responsible for would be the installation of both the decals and the signs.
For the aluminum signs, is there more expanded, like directional kind of signage that you could provide us to help guide people to parking lots so that they come use your app more?
Yeah, you know, all of our signage is customizable. We do like to stay away from putting too much information on a piece of, you know, on our material, just because let's say you have the hours of parking on there and they change down the road, then we have to supply new signage, and you know, we don't want to go down that route. So we like to just keep it, if we can, to, you know, the zone number, Park Mobile, like you're seeing in some of these examples. And then in that bottom left-hand corner, that 1-800-IVR number that we provide free of cost as well. So those who don't want to pay either at the meter and they don't want to download an app, they can actually call to create a parking session.
Just one quick observation, because I do use your app frequently. One of the things that I enjoy the most is that you can register different vehicles under your app. So you will be able to even be on a different vehicle or pay for somebody else parking because it's registered under your phone and the app.
Yeah, theoretically, you can pay for parking under, you know, if I'm sitting in a restaurant and someone's pulling up and I want to pay for their parking, if I have their license plate information, you know, you theoretically could do that. And I'll go back to this screen again real quick just to show you where that is. You can see on the third screen, it says your vehicle, and it'll give you all of the options. You're able to have 5 saved vehicles in one account. So you can easily switch between the vehicles that you may be using. And we have that in big and blue in the right before you hit start parking, just so you're, you know, super sure that you're in the right car. We don't want anybody to get tickets. That's one of our, you know, the biggest customer support issues we see is that somebody starts a session, but they actually start it with the wrong license plate.
Thank you.
Of course.
Back to the chief's other parts of his presentation about online permit parking and purchasing there. I just strongly support all of that. It's amazing. So let us know how we can help execute that.
I will let you know. I certainly will accept any and all assistance in moving this platform online. Absolutely. Thank you.
I was going to say, Rick and Jeff, we'd like to move forward with it, I think, from the consensus of the board. So if you can just, you know, take the appropriate steps and we can move forward with it.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, we will get this moving forward.
Any other
Great,
comments from anybody? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lex. And hopefully we'll see you down the road sooner rather than later.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
The next presentation is regarding the audio-visual options for the boardroom. We've learned that since we've had to quarantine and not meet in person, we've really have to upgrade our boardroom, and I think we've got a grant to help us with that. So I know we've been doing some research on it. So who's going to speak to that tonight? Ed?
We're actually putting this off to the next board meeting.
Okay.
Or Ed, are you going to talk about it?
No, I put in my summary that we were going to remove this from the agenda.
We're just trying to get all the information together and correct.
All right, so let's move on to presentation number 3, which is the application of 398 Ashford Avenue for a change of use of 3 retail units to residential. So who's here to speak about that?
Can you raise your hand if you're here to speak on this application? Thank you. David, can you hear us? David, can you hear us? David? Can you try to unmute yourself? I'm going to try and take you off as a panelist and then put you back on. I'm not sure why we can't hear you.
So anybody who has gotten on the Sawmill River Parkway traveling south from Dobbs Ferry has seen the building to the right that's been there since forever, since before the parkway went in and the thruway. So that building backs up onto the bridge to Ardsley and faces the entrance to the parkway. Mr. Rothbard has acquired that a while ago and renovated the upstairs apartments. There are 3 retail units on the first floor, which he would like to convert to residential units. To do so by our code, he would need to add parking for those 3 residential units and pay a recreation fee. He can pay the recreation fee, I suppose, but he does not have the room for the additional parking. So before he goes to the planning board to look at that change of use, you know, it's in the DT zone, so he needs to come here first and get final approval from the Board of Trustees. And maybe you could tell the planning board whether you'd be willing to issue a pilot for these parking spaces.
Do we know how many parking spaces we're talking about right now?
I believe it's 4.
And residential on the first floor is permitted in the DT zone, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, only in the DB are you required to put commercial on the first floor on the street.
I figure out how to unmute. So if it's only 4 parking spots, how many bedrooms is that? I assume he's trying to convert to 3 apartments or something else.
Yeah, it was 3 units plus I believe it was, yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was 2 bedrooms each. So that would be 4.5.
now there are apartments there already. You said he renovated. So what's the total number of apartments in that building?
I believe there's 6 currently, and he has 3 or 4 off-street spaces, which were existing before. And you know, we can't fit the new ones. He doesn't have to supply the ones for the existing because they're grandfathered in. He has to supply the change of use ones.
We see
Is there
David.
parking nearby someplace on our side street?
There's, you know, there's Ashford Avenue, which has multifamilies all over Ashford Avenue extension there. There's Lower Northfield, which has multifamilies there. There's not a lot of places.
David, can you hear us? Say something, David.
Looks like there's two 1-bedrooms, Donna, and then 1 2-bedroom, just from the floor plan that's there. I'm assuming that's correct. That's up to date.
think.
Can you hear me?
Get on?
So we can hear you now. So while David's trying to connect, how do the rest of the board feel about moving this along? Parking is obviously the issue.
Mike, can you screen share the plans that you're looking at? In lieu of David not being able to?
Do I need permission or can I share?
You can. You have permission.
That area does seem very tight in terms of parking. I would make the observation, and it's anecdotal, because other than being at the light, I haven't really stopped to look. But I believe that David's ownership of this has coincided with some significant improvements to that property aesthetically. It certainly seems much better kept and, you know, kind of thoughtfully managed than it was before.
Can anyone hear me? This is David. I've been having some issues on this end.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. I heard everything, the parking presentation, I heard everything, but for whatever reason, I was not able to hear anything else.
Did we lose him?
No, I'm here.
Okay, so David, we have the plans up. Can you give us some more information or shed some light on this, on your thinking?
Sure. Could and I apologize for the confusion here. Could Jennifer, can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Yes, you can.
Okay, sorry guys.
David, usually we have 7 minutes for a presentation. You're up into like 6 minutes already.
I understand. I am really sorry. That was not my intent. Okay, can everyone see?
Yes.
All right, first of all, I want to thank everyone for the time, and I'm sorry if I missed the first few minutes. Ed, thanks for the introduction. Although I didn't hear anything, I'm sure it was fantastic. You know, as you guys know, this building has been an eyesore for a long time. And I put together a short agenda here. I'm going to try to keep it under 5 minutes. And although I'll be starting a few minutes late, so I apologize. So it was in one family for a very long time. It fell into disrepair probably around 20 years ago. The location is a challenging location, but the building is there probably, if it's been there for 100 years, I'm assuming it'll be there for, I don't know, about another 100 years, but it's definitely part of Dobbs Ferry. And I think, you know, moving on to the progress snapshot, I have done a lot of upgrades. I'm hoping that people who pass by regularly can see that it looks better and it's not, you know, basically run down as a gateway to Dobbs Ferry. You come off the highway. Hopefully it's not the worst site that you see now, although there's still definitely improvements. We can go through the proposed plan quickly, but basically in short, the proposed plan is a change of use from commercial to residential. And I want to make basic upgrades to those 3 commercial spaces on the ground floor. I think the key questions are the parking questions. Essentially, right now is zoned commercial, and being zoned commercial is great in a way where I can put commercial tenants in there potentially, but I think it's really bad for the location. If I had a nail salon in there and there was 10 or 15 cars coming in and out of that small parking lot every day, it would be a disaster. And that's already a very challenging intersection with the highway. I've had conversations around them maybe putting a speed bump or something to slow the traffic coming off the highway. I got them to put a couple of those flexible medians, but there's still people come off the highway, as you know. Even I remember you guys had them put in these big arrows, which was nice, but they got rubbed off like within a month and you can't see the arrows anymore. So I don't think commercial is right for that neighborhood, even though I have demand for commercial. I think that I could have reasonable, affordable housing there. And I don't want to use that word lightly and put it into a category, but being that it's not a great location in general, but there is demand for housing, they're not expensive apartments. And I have five of those units are rented, and Ed worked with me getting them to the point where they were able to be occupied, and the tenants are happy. And I think if I was able to convert those 3 apartments into small units, then I think they would get rented out. And then at that point, it would really only be 1 car per apartment. So I think it would bring down the traffic demand by having it be residential. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about. Essentially, the ask here is for a change of use permission. That's number 1, which I think would be beneficial. And number 2 would be to give me some sort of a parking variance and not make it difficult for me to lower the traffic load on that intersection. Now, before we bring you through the plans, quickly, here's what the building looked like. If you remember the ugly fire escape and kind of the rundown, overgrown, here's what the building looks like today, which is obviously a lot cleaner. It's been repainted, new windows, a lot of improvements. Hopefully you guys notice. Here's please feel free to stop me at any point at this point, but I'll just go through quickly what I have in mind, and then we can open it for questions. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. Here's the site map over here, existing parking area. My plan is to be able to allow for more parking. Right now, I can fit 6 spaces. I'd like to be able to perhaps fit a few more spaces and put shrubbery around the overpass and kind of make that entire area nicer and obviously cut back on, just do some cosmetic landscaping that would make it even nicer than it is today. In terms of the actual plans that I have in place.
Dave. So go back to the site plan, please.
Sure.
So your shaded spaces are not on your property. So we can't approve that. Just the spaces that are on your property would apply. You can't build on someone else's property.
I understand. And that's a conversation that I want to raise with the Board of Trustees. Okay, and you know, I think obviously that is village property, but it's also, there's nothing that the village can do with it. And I think this would be a benefit. The change of use would be a benefit to the neighborhood. I think not having it be commercial space would be a benefit to the neighborhood. And right now that there is that little area, which is 10 feet or whatever it might be, there's no use for the village, and there's obviously, it could be a benefit use for the property, which is, as it is, a very tight property. So that's definitely part of the ask, is being able to allow me to add as many parking spaces as I can to make it a more seamless living situation for those 3 units.
And we'd have to confirm that that's village property before the Board of Trustees could give you the right to build on it.
Certainly.
And are we allowed to sell property like that?
You'd have to declare it surplus, but again, you'd need to make sure, because this location is so close to the state parkway, and that's state parkland because it's a parkway. So, you know, we need to determine, first of all, and then if you wanted to declare it surplus and sell it, you could do, or you may consider a license agreement for improvements. You know, there could be a number of ways to go, but essentially determining ownership is the first step.
I did speak to the highway department, and they said that it was not their property. Their property was just on the other side. They have a certain amount that comes in off the highway, but not on that side of the building. They do have there is like an access panel, I think, for the telephone pole that's there, or for the electric. Maybe it's the street light. I'm not sure. But other than that, that's not the highway department's property. That's what they told me, but I'm obviously I'll defer to the pros on that front. Ed, can I move on quickly?
Sure.
So in terms of the plans themselves, you're really looking at on the right-hand side, you have the slight demolition plans. On the left-hand side, it's really just making them into like just more sizable one bedrooms and kind of a bit of an open loft units and making the bathrooms a little bit larger, putting in standing showers as well. Other than that, it's not changing the existing structure. It's not changing the existing size of the units. It's just repositioning a couple of walls on the interior and upgrading and doing cosmetic upgrades. Over here, this is just an elevation plan of the building. This is the egress window, kind of just illustration of if there was egress, we would have to obviously we would comply with the code. Here is just a rendering of the building, but that's just a rendering. I may want to replace the front windows, which we would have to have. I'm not 100% sure if I have to, but if I do, this is a window rendering. They would basically match what's existing, what's there. They would just be higher energy efficiency. This is the survey that I've included, and lastly, this is just for illustration purposes only. The possibility, I can't see everyone's face, but I think there are ways to perhaps to highlight this building, even though it's not in a great location, but to make it interesting in complementary ways potentially to Dobbs Ferry. And those are just some wild ideas, but I'm going to stop sharing now because I can't see your faces and I'd like to see what your impressions are.
Well, David, we appreciate the fact that you definitely have upgraded that current status of the building. Obviously, you care about the village and you put a lot of time and effort into this. So
thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that. So
yeah, no, I love Dobbs Ferry. I'm invested personally. I think it's my favorite river town, and I'm not just saying that. I have personal relationships. I'd like to be involved and contribute in any way I can. I want everyone to know that, and I'm saying that wholeheartedly. And I'd like to make this a building that people are proud of, and I think we can do that. It's a little bit unique, being so close to the highway, but I think it has the potential for people to drive by and say, "That used to be a shithole, but now it looks great."
we can't talk like that. We're at a public meeting, David.
I'm sorry. Any questions?
Obviously, parking is an issue, so I want to open it up. Donna, you're the parking gurus. What do you think?
Well, in this situation, let's face it, he has 3 retail units that he could conceivably keep commercial, which would probably add even more traffic to that area than exists. I think the idea of apartments that are more affordable is definitely needed in the village. And at this point, and the upgrade of the area, I think is all worth giving him the waiver for the parking.
Larry?
I have reservations about the parking. I really respect, David, what you've done. That point in the village is a choke point from multiple directions, as you probably know better than I.
Sure.
Coming and going from there. And I want to be sure that we're not doing something that would really aggravate that. And I think I understand your argument about commercial space.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know the area north of that area well enough to know how much overflow parking there would be. And I think I would want to walk around and just get a sense of what the parking is like and whether it would be an impossibility.
Larry, I'm happy to meet you down at the building. I'm happy to meet anyone at the building, by the way, and give you guys firsthand view into what the current apartments look like and walk through the parking. What's interesting, what I find actually interesting is right in front of the building on Ashford, it's actually legal parking. And people have parked there, and that's extremely dangerous because with the cars coming off the highway and trying to get on the highway, if you have to pass by a car that's parked in front of my building, it's extremely dangerous. I'd much rather say put a no parking sign there so no one can park in front of the building and make it easier but once again, make it additionally easier on that roadway. Because sometimes people do park there and I'm like, it's a disaster waiting to happen. 3 weeks ago, a girl, 18-year-old girl came flying off the highway and popped the curb, just missed the building. You can still see the scrape marks on the sidewalk there. Just missed the building. And luckily she didn't get severely hurt, but it was a big accident. And when I speak to the highway department about it, they say, well, a car has never hit the building. And I'm like, I have a photograph of a car kissing the building. So you can't say that.
That building's been hit about 25 times that I've seen. What highway department are you talking about?
It's the
County?
sawmill. It's
The
George. No, up in Poughkeepsie. The guy is it's a George. The fellow's name is George, who I've been dealing with, and he's from the Sawmill River, highway department. He's one of the highway engineers, and he's been very nice. I mean, he's sent people down to see what they can do, put up signs that always get knocked down.
Right. I've lived in that neighborhood since 1963, and that building has been hit more times than a baseball. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous.
Well, Ed, you and I spoke about putting up some sort of something on the sidewalk just to protect the building. But I don't want to digress from the issue at hand. I think my goal is to minimize traffic flow. I don't want to have a retail operation like a nail salon that's seeing 20 clients a day. We all know that's not good. If there was 8 apartments and there were 8 cars coming in and out on a daily basis, that's once going to work and once coming back, that's, I think, a big help. In addition to that, having 3 additional apartments that are somewhat affordable is, I think, the best use for the building.
David, how do you feel about a traffic consultation? We have an expert who does traffic and parking. One of the experts do that. Review the situation.
What would that look like? Like how? Just explain to me the mechanics of that.
Well, an expert in the field would sit at the area and count cars and count how many spots are available and watch the flow and issue a report as to what they believe. If there is a parking situation or a traffic situation, they would issue then a report as to what they believe is appropriate or inappropriate.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I think if the objective is to decide if it's better to be commercial or residential, I don't think we need an expert to tell us that residential is going to have much less of an impact on the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's a parking issue, but I want to just pull everybody else. So Nicole, what do you think?
I agree with Larry. I'm concerned about where these people are possibly 2 cars per new apartment park. Are they going to be parking on Northfield now? Are they going to be taking, which those streets, I don't traverse them as much as others on this Zoom do, but I know there could be streets for parking. It seems like there's not a lot of good alternatives in general. So I'm not sure.
Christy?
I think between now and next meeting, it would be good to go out and see the space for ourselves, and then also find out who owns that land and whether or not there's a possibility of adding spots to that corner thing. Because if there could be more spots, if there was a transfer of ownership or whatever, then that would help solve the problem of not having spots for residents if they live there, right?
Correct.
Laura?
I agree with Christy. Now we all assuming that the people that are going to live there are going to have cars. Today is more common that people actually don't drive and take public transportation.
Yeah.
I do think that it's further more acknowledge of the area and the potential challenges that we could have by making it residential.
Laura, you're actually making a very, Maura, you're actually making a very good point. One of the things I want to offer the tenants is that I would buy a couple of electric bikes that people can use to commute to the station to incentivize people. I've installed a bike rack in the back. I'm an avid cyclist myself, so since 3 of the tenants have already started biking since they've moved into the building. So you're making a very valid point. Not everyone's going to have a car. Not everyone's going to have 2 cars. And there is some parking on Northfield. Not that I want to impact Northfield negatively, but you are making a valid point. The other thing to consider is that I could incentivize people, to have smaller cars. It's not that they'll do it because of the apartment, but I think not everyone who's moving into a 1-bedroom probably has an SUV. So, the general parking needs might not be like a regular parking family needs.
Okay, Michael, what do you think?
I think I just want to bring a few points up. The question about parking, commercial versus residential, it's going to overflow to Northfield no matter what, which is a fairly, sort of tight street in terms of parking. And the commercial use is kind of different time frame than residential use. A lot of those people leaving during the day, coming back at night. A lot of the commercial use is people coming in during the day, leaving in the evening. So that those can kind of work in tandem, whereas the residential use is really going to just exacerbate an already sort of crowded street. I also think there's a few things that have to do with the building, and these things would probably be addressed by by different boards. There's a commercial storefront that you're proposing to use for a living room, and I think in lieu of the question of cars hitting the building, it seems like a very undesirable living room condition that you're proposing. Very large window storefront, looks right at the highway with potential for sort of issues there. So I think that's a definite safety concern. And then I think that there's a benefit to having other areas of commercial sort of use. So we have most of our commercial sort of anchored in one part of the village, and there is this other part near the bridge, opposite Ashford Avenue from you, where there's some commercial, it is an opportunity for a business to, interesting small business with the kind of rents that are to go along with that site to find space in Dobbs Ferry. So I am somewhat leaning towards, I think the commercial option has more arguments in favor rather than the residential side.
Well, I mean, I definitely appreciate your position. I think the parking, you're making a valid point. They're a little bit different times. I think the issue is less about parking, more about traffic. If you think about every time a car pulling in and out, the residential use is basically twice a day.
I understand your argument. I heard it. I understand it.
Okay.
I'm just making a counterpoint to that.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think some of the board want to actually look at the site themselves, so that's certainly preferable, and we'll do some investigation as to the property that's adjoining it. And we'll take a look at this again. So David, we just want to thank you for your presentation. Yes, Laura Lee?
Would the applicant be preparing a title report to show the ownership of those properties? It would be difficult for us without the assistance of a title abstractor, which he would need to retain to do a search of the records.
David, is that a question for me?
Yes. Yeah, I'm suggesting that a title report would put the issues to rest. The word of the traffic engineer in Poughkeepsie is great, but because there was a taking long ago in order to put these roads through in these locations, it's entirely possible that these slices of property that you're referencing were included in the taking by the state of New York. So,
Okay.
you know, maybe pulling the takings maps by a professional title abstractor, you know, and any title company would be able to do that for you.
When you bought the property, did you have it done?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if the title, if I have a title, I definitely had the title work done. I'm not sure if it covered that little slice.
Okay.
Which is currently on the village's.
Okay.
Did a title search for the property you bought, not the adjacent property.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So who does that?
A title company, maybe even the same title company you used, if you present to them your issue, they might be able to quickly find whether a takings map around the time that this parkway was put through, there would have been an eminent domain and a takings map. It might be on file, it would be in archives in the county, but you would be able to find it in the land records.
All right. I will definitely do what I can to research that. Thank you, Lorelei. And I just want to thank everyone again for the time, for listening, and definitely longer than 6 minutes, but I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome, David. We'll see how this goes in the future. So thanks again, and let us know when you have that information.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving along. Item number 4 is a presentation on the application of 23 Manor Place to build a portion of a driveway on village property. Who's here to speak on that?
Okay. Joshua, can you hear us? And John, can you hear us?
Let me put the video.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Amir. Josh is my son, who apparently was using my computer earlier today and switched the Zoom ID.
Sorry.
That's okay. He would have been a much better presenter than I am anyway. So it's at your loss, not mine. But so thank you for the time and for allowing us to present this evening. John Pisa is on, and he's the principal of Pisa Financial, which is the owner of 23 Manor Place. Essentially, this is before you for a presentation to eventually hopefully go to public hearing to allow paving and maintenance on the right-of-way, the paper street that comes off of Temple Road in the village. Just by way of background, we were before the planning board, and after several sessions, the planning board granted a resolution allowing the applicant to pave over his existing driveway on his property. Adjacent to the property is the right-of-way that extends out, and if anyone has been to the property, you would probably see that the only people that use that right-of-way basically are the applicant, where it comes on and goes on to his driveway, and his adjacent neighbor at 14 Healy. They're the only ones who basically use that. According to the site plan, which had been approved by the planning board, the applicant would like to pave and maintain a portion of the right-of-way which continues in an easterly direction off of Temple Road, beyond the existing paved portion of the right-of-way. The resolution that the planning board had issued stated that the owner should obtain the approval of this board regarding any alteration or work on the paper street, and then have other potential conditions to it if necessary. So John can speak more to the purpose behind this, but before I turn it to him, I just want to share with the board a little bit of history. I provided to the village attorney, and hopefully you have the subdivision map, which relates to the property. In 2005, the village passed a demapping resolution, and then there was a subsequent resolution passed by or minutes of the planning board and the board of trustees. And basically it was demapped because at the time, the village wanted to limit the use of these paper streets as frontage for land use development purposes, which is what the minutes reflect in those proceedings. So it's still village-owned property. It was just demapped approximately 15 years ago to minimize usage as frontage. So with that, I'd like to turn over to John if you want to speak to the particulars of the work that is going to transpire.
I think for us, the main question that we have right now is the ownership. I know there's a neighbor, and I know that you had entered into a shared driveway agreement, but we are, concerned about the ownership of the entire street. And I know you had this discussion with the village attorney about doing a title report, and I think a title report is the best way to go initially, so then we can go forward safely, knowing who's the proper ownership. And maybe Laura Lee, you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can. There are a few ways demapped paper streets are conveyed depending upon the subdivision approval process. In some cases, the demapped areas of a subdivision will revert to adjacent property owners up to a center line in a road. In some cases, they don't revert automatically and they need a deed of conveyance to the adjacent property owners. So this may be village property because it is a demapped piece of property on a filed subdivision map. It was included in your demapping resolution in 2005, but there had been no subsequent action to make the conveyance in any official capacity. So the short answer is it's either village property or Mr. Pisa owns to the middle center line and the adjacent property owner owns to the center line. So that would be the property owner across the demapped street, not the property owner next door that is very willing to have Mr. Pisa upgrade, and the planning board's resolution requires them to file a maintenance agreement. So it's in the chain of title should the title change hands to either Mr. Pisa's property or the property to his side. The question is whether this reversion of title occurred to the center line of this demapped street to the property owner across the street. And that's the question. We could of course move forward if this was village property, if that was how you want it to go. But without having that essential title question, you may be granting approval for him to improve property that he does not have the right to improve, and we don't have the right to grant permission for him to improve. So it's sort of an essential chicken egg question, but the property owner across the street could own a portion of this demapped street. We don't know. And really without a clear title question answered, there's a risk to the village to improving property in this way.
So if I can just relate, so we did a search of the county clerk's records to see if we could find there's any instrument that would expressly revert title to the adjacent property owners. We mapped out all of the adjacent property owners. There's nothing that we saw in the county clerk's records which would reflect that. There's nothing that I'm aware of in the village records that would reflect that. The last instrument that we saw with respect to this right away is the demapping resolution, which clearly was for the purposes of removing the frontage use of demapped of paper streets. There's no indication, at least on its face, that the village ceased ownership of the paper street. So I'm not sure what writing would be out there which would reflect otherwise. If we ran a title report, I would imagine that the title report would do the same search that we did of the county clerks and village records and would come up with the same conclusion, that there's no instrument that reflects any reverter back.
That title report then would be certified by a professional and having been reviewed by the title insurance company's attorneys. So, we can, like in the last application that was just here, we can take people's words and we can look at documents ourselves, or someone with the specific knowledge necessary could determine and certify in a particular way, which would protect the village from moving forward to give permission on property that it may or may not own. I know your relationship next door is good. I don't know the relationship across the street. Without that, I couldn't advise my client, this board, to move forward with any degree of certainty, and it really does pose a lot of risk.
Oh, no, I agree. A title report certified by a title company, which would reflect what's of record. So that would give comfort, it would seem to give comfort to the village on that issue. The question I have is, assuming that title report shows that there's no instrument and confirms what we're saying, then do we move to the next step, which would be consideration of the application?
Shouldn't we find that out before we make that decision?
Yeah, I don't think really the purpose of tonight was to set a date for a public hearing. And I don't think that they could make a resolution to set a date for a public hearing without that initial step in place. So if you would return with the certified information, then we'd have something with which to make a risk analysis in order to move forward.
May I ask something then, just to clarify? Sure. So if we obtain a title report within the next several days and it's a certified title report to the applicant, would that enable the village to place this for a public hearing at the next session?
No, they need to pass a resolution setting the public hearing. So that needs to be done at a public meeting in accordance with open meetings law. They couldn't pass a resolution conditioned upon receipt of something. They would need to set that date at a public meeting, so the public would be notified, and then we would need to publish. Ms. Draper is very well versed in the schedules for the publication in our paper of record. So we would need to take up the matter, discuss it, assess the risk of moving forward, and then pass a resolution to a date certain in the future for the public hearing.
Couldn't you set it down for a public hearing, and at that public hearing consider whether the village owns the property or not? And if it does not own the property, it could pass a resolution denying the application for that legitimate reason.
It just seems to me this discussion should be happening offline, not at a board of trustee meeting. So at this point, I'm going to close this presentation, and on advice of counsel, I'm just going to ask you to produce that information. Okay. Thank you for appearing. And when you do get that information, you do want to.
If I may, I think I'm pretty confident. Hi, I'm sorry. It's John Pisa. I'm pretty confident that we have a title report already in the file at the building department, because this matter was before them for quite some time. And I'd be happy to get that over to whoever needs to have it at the BOT. But, because we've gone back and forth over this matter, and we had to verify who owned the paper road in previous meetings with the planning board and with the attorneys. So if you'd like, I could get that over to you from your existing files.
Well, go ahead. I mean, I haven't seen any reference to it previously.
And I think my discussions with Mr. Posen, who represents the planning board just this afternoon, indicated that really we don't have sufficient evidence of the title yet. So if there is a report somewhere in a file bringing it to light would be helpful.
No, I definitely would do that. And with my and Mr. Amir spent his time and actually found minutes of the meetings of previous Board of Trustee meetings, indicating an answer that answered all of Mr. Posen's questions that he was asking, and it was in your own files. So all the information that he was looking for is in your own files. All that had to be done was just looked at. But I will definitely.
I don't believe that's accurate. I've seen an email from people and it has never been referenced before. So, but I don't want to, this is not the time and the place to argue
That's
about
fine.
it.
Okay.
Get it, present it to us, and we'll move forward from there. Clearly, Mr. Amir, you've done a lot of research and work on it. I just think on advice of counsel, we're going to go forward with her advice, and then we'll go forward from there.
That's
Okay?
fine. Not a
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
And
you.
also, if there was a question about the submission made to this board, just to be sure it's reflective of the submission that's already been presented to the planning board. We don't want to start fresh with a new submission. So if you could just confirm that the documents that you are presenting to the village board are exactly the same documents that the planning board passed their resolution on. That would be helpful because there's some confusion about last revised date. So just heads up, double check. That would be great.
We'll take care
Thank you.
of it.
Thank you.
Everybody. Okay. Agenda item number 1. This is a continuation of a public hearing. We consider the application of 115 Broadway Cabrini parking lot. So is there a motion to open this public hearing? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? Okay, the public hearing is now open. Just at the outset, we did have a special meeting on July 27th where a presentation was made and discussions were held. Who's here to speak on behalf of the applicant? Anybody?
I think Mr. Geoffrey's attending this evening.
Yes, I just promoted him to a panelist.
Great. I did circulate the outline of a resolution, which of course you would need to discuss during your deliberation process and revise accordingly. But yeah, there's Mr. Geoffrey this evening.
Mr. Geoffrey, is there anything, I mean, we did meet, we have reviewed all the documentation that's been submitted to us. Is there anything very briefly that you'd like to add or clarify?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. No, I think this application has been pending before the village for a significant period of time. We provided the formal submission and documentation, which were reflective of the discussion that were had at the special meeting. I do understand that you have a draft resolution before you for consideration, and we have nothing further at this point unless the board has any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have, any of the trustees have any comments? We, like I said, we did attend the prior special meeting. There have been engineering reports. We do have a resolution that has been sent to us. Are there any other comments, questions before I close the public hearing and move for a vote?
I don't see anyone with their hands up.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would just suggest before we close it, we make sure there's nobody on the line who wants to comment from the public.
I think Jennifer just said that, right, Jen?
Yes. Oh, wait, there is, oh, one person just raised their hand. Hold on one second. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, yes, I can. I was just wondering, are we talking about 41 Cedar?
No.
Sorry.
No.
Okay. Anybody else from the public?
There's no one else.
Okay. So is there anybody else would like to say anything before I close this hearing? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have one comment with respect to the resolution. I don't know if it's appropriate to do while the public hearing is open or closed.
Go ahead, make your comment.
The draft resolution identifies that this is a type 1 action. I believe this is an unlisted action.
It is. That was my mistake. Good catch. Thank you. I was going to make that change on the record, but we appreciate that. Thank you. The applicant submitted a short form EAF. If you recall, the part 1 having been completed by the applicant. So this evening's resolution would include a determination of significance, and I'm proposing that a negative declaration would be appropriate, and I've included that language. But I did misclassify this as a type 1 instead of unlisted, and it should be unlisted. So I've made that change in the final so far.
Okay. Is there a motion to close this public hearing? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. So the public hearing is now closed. Before us, we do have a resolution. Is there a motion to approve the site plan of 115 Broadway, St. Cabrini? Someone's got to make a motion if we're going to move forward on this. Trustee Nell, second. Trustee Patino. The motion.
Now you can discuss. It's open for discussion and any revisions.
So the resolution has been before us, and we've discussed what the compromise has been. There's going to, we have the plans in front of us. Does anybody have any other comments or questions that they'd like to make before we vote?
I did. So I know the revised plan is for 18 spots and then 4 redrawn spots and then 2 additional spots. So have you, like, is it now 24 instead of 25 spots, or is there a parking spot missing that I'm not aware of?
It's an increase of 25 spots.
Where's the 7th spot then?
If you'd like us to walk through, I believe our engineer, Ralph Perugine, is on, and maybe he can share a screen if we need to point it out for everybody.
That would be helpful. Thanks.
Because the resolution only talks about 24 spots too.
Oh, I think it mentions, does it? Yeah.
You might mention 25 total spots.
No,
When
it's
it
just
talks
25
about where the spots
last
are,
row.
it's 18 in the lot, 4 that are going to be relined, and then 2 additional spots somewhere else, and then that's it. So where's the extra spot?
Restriping of 4 bays, but I believe the restriping accommodates the 25. I think that's where that additional space comes in.
Is Mr. Perugine joining us?
He is here. Hold on one second. Sorry.
I wasn't promoted to panelist, that's why.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Perugine. Could you just review, please, how the 25th spot appears?
Sure, I'm sharing my screen right now.
Thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we gain 1 parking space for each of these 3 bays here by restriping them to 8 foot 6 inch minimum. They're slightly over, but that's where we're gaining 3 in this location. We have 2 next to the loading dock, so that's 5. We have 18 in the new parking lot for a total of 23, and there are 2 additional spaces being gained. We added 1 here, and we gain overall 2 by restriping this bay. So there's 4 locations, 4 bays that were striped, and those 4 bays gain that additional space by widening the adding 1 additional parking space at this location. So that's the 25.
Yeah, and I believe the whereas clause indicates the restriping of 4 parking bays.
Correct. Well, and we extended it slightly, so.
Right.
We added 9 feet in this parking bay to get additional space.
And if you recall, your parking consultant indicated that long-term parking generally meets this standard of 8'6" wide because there's no coming and going. And since the stated purpose here is to accommodate the staff, the needs of the staff, this is proximate to the staff entrance. So I earlier had discussed with Mr. Geoffrey about whether a waiver was necessary, but because this is a standard design element for long-term parking, I do not believe there's a waiver necessary, but I would defer to Mr. Manley if he would like to add that to the resolution to make it clear that you're granting. You're granting it based upon the listed documents, the drawings prepared, including the landscape plan that you have in the resolution before you. And it's clear from there that you are approving maximum 8'6" wide parking stalls due to the striping. So
Minimum.
really would be up to you if you'd like me to add additional language.
We do have to grant the waiver because in our code, commercial spaces need to be 9 foot wide.
Great.
Any other questions?
So I'll add that before the conditions at the end. I'll add a clause that indicates the village board will be waiving the 9 foot minimum standard for commercial parking spaces.
You wish me to stop sharing now, or?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess it's my error that I misread the bays as a not parking bay isn't a word I'm usually familiar with. So I read it as parking spaces. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Given there's a high degree of technical information included in our packet, I know that the planning board reviewed this for some time and had a certain take on it. Does this go back to the planning board to review for some of the technical drainage related issues? Or have those already been reviewed? And
that would have been reviewed by your consulting engineer. So you might make a condition that pending the final sign off by your consulting engineer. Ed, this was seen by Han in the past?
Yes, and the new parking area has gotten smaller, so we could have Han confirm that the stormwater retention is still adequate.
Okay. I'll add that as a condition too.
Anything
Now,
else?
my other question is whether you have a standard length of time for site plans to be valid, and you need to pull a building permit at a particular time. And if so, we should add that as a condition as well. Like the site plan approval.
Board approvals can expire in 6 months, or they can be extended at the determination of the building inspector.
Okay.
Okay, so with the additions and conditions that Laura Lee is going to add to the resolution that's before us, I'd like to take a vote. All in favor of this something else you want to say?
I just have
like to say something.
one more. I want to make sure invoices are being paid from the escrow. That's the only thing. If there are any outstanding invoices, you should make sure that it's a condition that they be paid. Sorry. I know we have a long agenda, but that's important.
Yes, Donna?
Yeah, I just want to make, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to make a comment for those who didn't see the special meeting that we had. And I just want to reiterate what I said at that meeting. I totally appreciate the efforts that were made to try to reduce the size of the slot. At the same time, I still believe that it violates our vision plan in 2 ways. One, we are paving over special green space, and there are no provisions to reduce the amount of cars coming into that facility.
Okay, all in favor of the resolution as outlined by Laura Lee, raise your hand.
That includes the changes that she just stated on the record.
Yes.
draft as revised. And I would do a roll call just to make sure, because we're going to have to produce a verbatim transcript. So if you could do a roll call, that would be helpful.
Certainly. Deputy Mayor.
Because Laura Lee, on your resolution, it says I keep losing where it is. I'm sorry. Anyway, it said something about the drawing dates, and it refers back to the 2019 drawing dates, and then lists all with the August 3rd, 2020 days, because they were all the originals been
Yeah.
updated.
The original drawings were dated February 2nd, 2019, and this allows you to approve the version of those documents last revised on the 3rd of August. So
Okay,
you're approving that document in accordance with the table that's in.
And did the ones from the 3rd of August include the actual landscaping plan, or is that still undecided?
Plan is in the set. The landscape plan is part of the set that we submitted. The last sheet.
The landscaping plan is titled L1. It was dated May 3rd, 2019, last revised August 3rd, 2020.
Right, but that's since our meeting, so we haven't publicly seen that yet.
You should have it in your packet tonight, right?
No, I don't mean that. I mean it hasn't been part of a public meeting. We haven't discussed it or looked at it.
I think we're ready to move forward with it. So can we just vote on this? Trustee Deputy Mayor Cassell, how do you feel?
I say no.
Okay. Trustee Taylor?
I'm in favor of the plan.
Trustee Sullivan?
I'm in favor of it, but I would like to have, there was some issues last time at the public meeting that we had on the July 27th, I think it was, about the trees and where they're going to be. So I would appreciate it if our own village expert looked at it and approved it as part of the resolution. But I do appreciate the applicant working with us and reducing the size of the lot to 18 spots. And I do appreciate that, the alternative that had been presented by Mr. Jacomart was not as feasible as we may have liked, due to in part where the residents, who are elderly and infirm in so many cases, look out. And so them having a better view might warrant us making exceptions to the issues raised by Donna.
So would you like the resolution to be further revised to reflect that the landscape plans last revised the 3rd of August be subject to the final review in the same manner that the plans will be subject to the final review by Han? This would be subject to the final review by the village's retained landscape architect.
I would.
Okay, so that's a new resolution.
Those conditions.
So
I need a motion to put that resolution forward.
That was Nicole.
I move to put that resolution forward.
There you go.
Second, Trustee Nell, all in favor?
Okay. No, roll call.
Got it.
Go back to the beginning.
Deputy
Sorry.
Mayor Cassell, have you changed your mind on that?
I have not.
Okay. Trustee Taylor?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Trustee Sullivan, I'm assuming you're in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Trustee Nell?
I'm in favor.
Trustee DeRozzi?
I'm not in favor. I think that is in violation of our vision plan. I appreciate very much all the efforts that the developer has presented, but I still think that we have not exhausted all the alternative options, and I am not in agreement of this project.
Trustee Patino?
In favor.
You said in favor?
That's correct.
And I'm also in favor, so that passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll get a revised resolution over to the clerk ASAP.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, agenda item number 2 is a continuation of public hearing for review of the application of 41 Cedar Street. I need a motion to open that public hearing. Is there a motion? Trustee Nell, second Trustee Taylor, all in favor? That public hearing is now open. I would like to acknowledge that we had received a letter dated August 3rd from the attorney representing the applicant, Linda Whitehead. I'd also like to acknowledge that I have received, the board has received correspondence from Mark Blanchard dated August 11th, 2020, from Mary Ford Sussman dated August 11th, 2020, from Michael Sabatino dated August 11th, 2020. I think I've gotten more. Let me just. Email from Leslie U. Walter dated August 10th, 2020. So I do acknowledge that, and that will be made part of the record. So who's here speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, Mayor. Linda Whitehead with the firm of McCullough, Goldberger and Stout, representing the applicant. We have our whole team here as well. First, I want to thank the board for taking the time to have the joint meeting with the planning board and the AHRB, and I apologize that I missed part of it since I was on another meeting, but I think it was productive, and we just want to thank you for taking that time. We've listened to all the comments that were made that night, and we've submitted to you revised plans addressing a number of things that were raised and several changes which really are designed to reduce the bulk and mass of the building. And we're going to show you that, and we have a quick revised virtual reality presentation to sort of help you see that. Excuse me. The overall height of the building, you'll remember that previously we were showing it at 46 feet 10 inches to the top of the 4th floor. That would have required a waiver. We have actually lowered the building, the entire building, so that the height to the top of the 4th floor is 45 feet as permitted by zoning. In doing so, it pulled the top of the 3rd floor down from 35 feet 4 inches down to 33 feet 8 inches. So that significantly lowers the view that you're looking at right now from Cedar Street, where you only see the first 3 floors. So everything now has been reduced in size and complies with the maximum 45 feet. We've also reduced the area of the 4th floor. It's become narrower. It is reduced from 6,260 square feet to 5,140, which is 50% of the 3rd floor. In making it narrower, we've increased the setback from the side of the property facing Zion Church so that the 4th floor is now about 14 feet 2 inches from that side, where it used to be 10 feet. So it's further away from Zion. We've also added some jogs in the layout of the 4th floor that you'll see in a minute, and that just reduces the appearance of the massing as well. The bulkhead, which I know was raised as a concern, has been significantly reduced as well. The bulkhead is now only 514 square feet. We have to have it because it's the stair and elevator bulkhead. But what you'll see as we go through the presentation is that at 514 square feet, which is only 10 feet of or 10% of the 4th floor, it's really minimally visible and not visible from most views of the building. We revised the interior layout so that the 2-bedroom affordable units, the 2-bedroom affordable units are now larger, and they are 80% of the average area of the market rate units as required by your code. So that's adjusted all the unit sizes to accomplish that. At this time, the only waiver that's required is for 1 parking space. That's the additional parking space required by the additional affordable unit. We are also requesting that 3 parking spaces for the retail demand be on the street. And our client is willing to pay the payment in lieu for all 4 of those parking spaces. Again, this significantly reduces the street parking demand over the existing condition, Currently, there is no off-site parking for several retail spaces as well as the residential uses. So it's a benefit, a net benefit that we are providing the on-site parking. We've also retained a landscape architect. She is here tonight if anybody has questions. She has reviewed the landscape plan and made some changes, and she's done some further work on it even since our submission, which we will show you this evening. And she's looking forward to working with the village's landscape architect towards a final plan. As also discussed and requested, we've provided some additional information in relation to views of the rear from the South Presbyterian Church property. That was included in the submission, and we'll also show it to you tonight. From the elevation of the parking lot, the top 2 floors of this building, really the 3rd floor and the partial 4th floor, will be visible. Mainly just in the winter because there's some pretty significant landscaping back there that blocks the view during much of the year. So, you know, we've previously discussed the benefits of having the 4th floor. It significantly reduces the construction impacts and the construction time frame by avoiding the need for deep excavation. The parking is now at the ground level, so we don't need to do the significant excavation. And we've added an additional affordable unit as we've discussed. The plan complies with the vision plan, meets the benefits set forth in the vision plan. We've provided a new pocket park. We've reduced the on-street parking demand, and the project will generate significant tax revenues to the village and the school district. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christina Griffin, who's going to just take you quickly. I know it's already been a long night and you have a long agenda ahead, but we'd like to take just a few minutes to quickly show you the changes in the plans. So Christina.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I am Christina Griffin, principal of CGA Studio Architects, and we're here tonight to show you the changes that we made from the last meeting. And based on a lot of the comments that were made by the Planning Board, AHRB, and the Board of Trustees, we have made some changes to mitigate the bulk of the building and also have a more code compliant proposal. Next slide, Suzanne. Suzanne Levine is with me, the project designer, and she's going to be taking charge of this presentation. This is our zoning data sheet that we have changed to show that the height of the building now is 45 feet, top of the building. That meets the code for a 4-story building that is, if approved by the BOT. We have reduced the area of the 4th floor, so that is no more than 50% of the 3rd floor below, which is a requirement of a 4th story in the downtown district. We have reduced the bulkhead area so that it is now only 10% of the 4th floor, and instead of the 20% we had last time. And you're going to see when we show you the virtual reality soon how these changes have made an impact on the size and massing of the building. In total, we reduced the area, the floor area of the building by 1,529 square feet. Another item, when it comes to parking, we still have the same status of 23 spaces provided in the garage, 3 provided on the street, 1 waiver. 1 requires, we are required to have 1 more, which will need a waiver. But I'll remind the board, we now have 16 units because we added 1 studio unit. So that's why we need a total of 27 spaces, 1 waiver that unit. We also added our calculations for affordable housing requirements. We did a calculation to find out what the average size of the market rate 2-bedroom unit is, and that's 1,494 square feet. And then we did a calculation to find out what would be 80% of that area, which is a requirement for an affordable housing unit. It must be 80% of the average size market rate unit. And that number is 1,195. So what we did is we increased the affordable housing 2-bedroom units that are required for the project to a larger number, and I believe it's 1,000. That unit is 1,198. Yes. Slightly more than the 80% of a market rate unit. Next slide, Suzanne, please. This is our latest site plan showing the new shape of the 4th floor. We have added some jogs in that 4th floor story so that it is more interesting and less of a big square shape. Now this 4th floor is only is just under 50% of the 3rd floor, and the bulkhead is only 10% of the 4th floor. Next slide, Susan. Our 1st floor hasn't really changed. We still have 1,400 square feet of retail space, same number of parking in the garage below. We've made some changes to the stair layouts. That's because we had to reconfigure the units for the affordable housing units. Next slide, please. On our 2nd floor plan, we simplified this so you could see that Unit 1 and Unit 2 are the 2 affordable housing units. One is a 2-bedroom unit, and then Unit 2 is a studio unit. Next slide, please. And this is our 3rd floor plan, and Unit 8 is our 2-bedroom unit. We had to reduce some of the market rate units in order to get the square footage necessary so that these units are no more than 80% of the average floor area of the 2-bedroom market rate units. Next slide, please. This is our latest roof plan on the left. I'm sorry, this is our 4th floor plan on the left and our roof plan on the right. So on the left, you see we have 3 units up there. We have now a 41-foot setback on one side of the 4th floor units and 34 feet 10 on the other. So this has been reduced by 1,100 square feet compared to what we had last time. And then on the right is our roof plan, just showing up on top. We have a very small bulkhead. We are showing the layout so you can see it's just big enough for the elevator and stair. And we're going to have to find space for mechanical units, mechanical equipment somewhere else in the building. This is showing roof decks on the 4th floor roof and also a green roof on the east, southeast corner. Next slide, Suzanne. Our latest elevations show a reduced height of 33 feet 8 to the top of the 3rd floor and 45 feet to the top of the 4th floor roof. We did this by reducing the ceiling height of the retail space to 10 feet 6 and taking some space out of the roof structure that we had for both the 3rd and the 4th floors. And you can see that the bulkhead has been reduced quite a bit from the last version. Next slide. This is our west elevation. It's just showing some changes that we have made to reduce the 4th floor and the bulkhead. It's very similar to before, where the building is now tucked into the grade so that you have full 3 stories in front facing cedar. And then the building at the end is about a little more than 2 stories above the grade along the south property line. Next slide, Suzanne. This is our, hold on. This is our south elevation, and the dark dashed line is the grade at the property line between 41 Cedar Street and the South Presbyterian Church property. And as you can see from that line up, you see about 2 stories of the building, which is the 3rd floor and the 4th floor. And then you see the reduced bulkhead above. I want to point out we've added these jogs in the 4th floor story so that we could add interest and increase some of the roof decks we have at that level. Next slide. And this is our east elevation, and that shape is the shape of the old theater building. And the elevation of that is the top of that roof is 4 feet above, below the top of our 4th floor roof. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our streetscape. The one above is the existing buildings, showing the theater building to the east of our site, the tower, and then the old buildings to the right, and down below we have our proposed streetscape. This has changed since the last time, because we have reduced the height of the 3-story portion to 33 feet 8. The top of the third floor roof is 7.3 feet below the top of the theater building. And then our 4th floor roof is now at 217, which is 1 foot below the tower of the theater building. And that is now at 45 feet above the sidewalk. Next slide. Now this is a section that is actually taken through our site at 41 Cedar Street, going from the north to the south, and then along the property at the South Presbyterian Church. We were asked to provide this, and we did this based on a topographic survey. So all these elevations of the South Presbyterian Church up to that property line is accurate. The shape of the church is a rough estimate of the height and location of the church. As you can see, the grade that comes up to the retaining wall is just about level at that property line with the 3rd floor. And then the grade drops down along the side of the building until we get to our 3-story portion along Cedar. Down below are some of the photos the board requested of the South Presbyterian Church property. And these are views going left to right, looking towards the Cedar Street property. It's not so easy to see because of the trees that are there right now. And next slide, please. And this is our latest landscape plan. This is being developed by Aspect 120, Susan Chanchell, who is our landscape architect. And this will be submitted to the village consulting landscape architect for her review. Now, I think we have a few more slides just to show you the photos of the existing conditions at the Zion Church. We showed this to you last time, but we were asked to submit these to you so you can review them before today's meeting. So this is just here. We did discuss this. These are just different views looking up the driveway on the left of the Zion Church, looking towards the property, the one on the right, and down below showing the trees that are between the Zion Church property, I think. These are just different views of the Zion Church property. And so now I think, well, we always have this on hand in case you want to see the photos of the site as it exists currently. So So we'd like to now show you the virtual reality that we have prepared, which is going to show you the revised building with the lower third floor roof, lower fourth floor roof, lower bulk floor, and reduced size of the bulkhead. This is a simulation of some pedestrian walking down the street, looking towards the building. This virtual reality is based on the dimensions that are shown on our drawings. And we're going to continue all the way down the street and then turn around. We were asked to look at the views from further down the street. And this is as if you were walking, towards the east now. And if you could stop, Sina, just for a second. I just want everyone to see that compared to last time, the fourth floor now has receded because we reduced the floor area and the height of the fourth floor. We also reduced the third floor. You can keep going, Sina, please. And as you come up to the building, the fourth floor disappears the closer you get to the building. So now, Sina is going to take us up onto the Zion Church property. He's up at the church right now. We're turning around. So you can see the views from uphill on the site, the Zion Church property, looking towards the building. The setback also of the fourth floor from the western face of the third floor has also been increased. Now, the trees and shrubbery, this is really more of a simulation of our landscaping plan. But the heights and the size of the building reflects the latest drawings. And so this is a view from across the street. And as you can see, if Sina, try to simulate the view from a person's eye, point of view from, like a person walking along the sidewalk. And as you look back at the building from this sidewalk on the north of the building, you can't, now the fourth floor is completely receded from view. He's walking now east, so you can look up at the tower and you can just about see a section of that fourth floor, just a little bit of the railing up there. Now, Sina, I'd like you to ask you to go the other way up along the building and try to get onto the South Presbyterian Church property and look back. Now we're walking along the sidewalk in front of the building. And we're turning around, going up the driveway. Okay. Now we turn around. Now we can just pause here for a minute. We were asked to provide a view from the South Presbyterian Church property. And this is a simulation of the where the ground meets the retaining wall here. There's a drop down to the patios of the units that are on the second floor. And then above that, you see the third floor units. And then in the dark gray color is the fourth floor. And what we've done here is we've introduced this jog in the building so that we could add more interest and have less of a flush building and have some roof decks up there. Can you move back a little bit, Sina? Yeah. I'm doing this because we were asked to show you views of someone standing on the South Presbyterian Church property. So this is an idea of what the building would look like from there. Okay, so why don't we just go back down the driveway and look back at the building one more time. You can see the retaining walls here, which are much lower than our original design, and the landscaping that is coming up and hugging the edge of the building. And under those roof decks is actually the parking area, the garage, which is completely concealed from view. So I'd like to give this back to Linda, and she's going to summarize and see if you have any questions for us.
Thank you, Christina. So I think you can see, or I hope you can see, that we've tried to be responsive. We've made a lot of changes to address various comments. We've moved the excavation and the wall away from the Zion Church property line. We've reduced the bulk of the building and the overall size of the building pretty significantly. We've brought in a landscape architect. We've tried to be responsive, and we hope that you agree, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I'll start then. I have a question going to the parking. You may have addressed this in the past, but I've been asked to re-ask it. I know the traffic committee sent a recommendation, as did the Westchester Planning Board, to consider the possibility of unbundled parking in this building for those spaces. It would allow for, if the spaces aren't being used by the residents, and they always get first crack at it, that the spaces could then become available to outside people, to outside parkers, whether it's residents in the area or businesses, whatever. And it would also, for the people who don't know what unbundled parking is that it would mean that in rentals and in condos, you are given a parking space, and that is, and there's usually a price attached to that is automatically fed into the selling price or the rental price of the unit. And unbundled parking, the residents would have the option to have a parking space or two parking spaces, and they would pay for that rather than have it automatically put into their fee base. And if they didn't want those spaces, then the management company or whoever could rent those spaces out for whatever they wanted to people in the area, and possibly helping to remove more parking from the street. At the same time, the residents would always have, periodically, however you would work it out, the residents in the building would have first option of taking a parking space. If 6 months later they did get a car, or a year later they did get a car, they would then be able to have first crack at retaining that space. So I don't know if you have looked into that, if that's something you could consider.
Our client, obviously we saw the request, and we know it's been stated before. We saw it from the Traffic Commission. Our clients considered it. We really would prefer not to do that. There are security reasons. It's going to be, sort of, the residents are going to rely on the safety and security. It's going to be a secure facility. So they don't want to open it up to non-residents and the public to be parking within this garage. So at this time, our answer to that request is no.
Is it going to be available for the owners and employees of the commercial space?
If there are spaces that are not being used by the residents, then they may consider allowing absolutely would consider it. Just getting a yes text from my client. Yes, it would be available for the retail space.
And so just so we understand, there's going to be 23 spots, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And there's 16 apartments. So is each apartment getting assigned one spot? And then what's the remainder 7?
Some of them may get more than one. I don't think it's been determined yet exactly how they're going to be allocated.
But is each unit getting a parking spot?
Each unit will get at least one and some will get 2.
Okay. So even the affordable ones will have a parking spot attached to it.
Yes. Yes.
-1.
I know that someone had mentioned it at the joint meeting, and in light of what's happened with the storm and we lost power on Main Street, there was some talk about burying the power lines. Can you talk about the power will be coming in from a power line? That's your plan, and how open would you be to burying lines for the wires to power your building and maybe adjoining buildings for a certain number of feet?
So obviously that's really a Con Ed issue because you have to work with Con Ed to do that, although they charge you for it. We will do everything we can to try to bring the power into our building below ground, but it's coming from above ground poles. And without knowing what Con Ed would be looking for in terms of cost of that, we can't give a definitive answer. And we're willing to talk to Con Ed. But it gets complicated and it can get extremely expensive.
So I think that would be a good point if you could at least reach out to Con Ed and give us how much that would cost and feasibility of that.
I will highly recommend that, Mr. Mayor, and I think that that would be a very smart move by the developer. I just recently, as you know, opened a hotel, and although a lot of people lost power around me, my lines are underground and I did not lose power. So I highly suggest that you look into that.
Yeah, part of the problem with that, and I know it just from where I live, where my lines are below ground, but everything feeding it is above ground. So when you bury only a short portion, even one street, it doesn't always help because it's fed by above ground lines around it. Unfortunately, that's the nature of our area. And I don't know, we would really be looking at just the area in front of our building.
I get it, but you have to start somewhere, right? So then we can move to the next development and have them do the same thing. So
I think my client would like to say something. He's appeared.
I have appeared. So in order for Con Ed to even entertain any discussions, they're very, as you can imagine, they have their procedure. We would have to, at the very least, we don't have to show them a building permit, but an approval for a project. And then they would give us a case number, and then we could start the talks with Con Ed about service and so on, where to put it, how is it going to be conducted into the building.
And they're not quick. So I think the bottom line is we're happy to, when we can and when they're willing to start the discussion with us, we'll start it, but we're not going to be able to get that number. It's not like they're going to discuss it with us and get us a number in the next couple of weeks. That they don't work that way.
Right, but and Laura Lee, you could answer this. Can we condition approval on something of that nature?
You can put in a condition, yes, that they entertain this, much like the county requires an I&I buy-in from adjacent frontages. If you can get the chain started, then it's much easier for the. I'm sorry, Mr. Marfione, but the second person, it makes it easier for them to take up the cause.
But we're not talking about a condition to actually bury them. Are we talking about a condition to investigate it? Because it's something that's out of our control.
Why is it out of your control? It seems to me it's a cost issue.
It may not be only a cost issue. It may be
It doesn't always work for them. I actually had this happen on another project in Harrison recently.
It could be an engineering issue. It could be, I mean, we agree, we don't necessarily love that pole right there in front of our building.
Yes.
But I know enough that it could be an engineering issue. But we will definitely would entertain it, at least for the stretch of frontage for our property. But again, unless you present them with some approval, they won't even open up a case number.
You have our approval.
Lori Lee, what would our options be here for conditions in the resolution regarding this? Because they're right, it doesn't seem fair that if the condition was that they get it to happen, and then there's all these other reasons that it could be that it doesn't happen. But if the primary reason is money, then I guess it would be the other reasons that we would. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, you could certainly require them, if you were going to move forward with a condition about investigating this, and you could require them to return to the building department with the plans and with evidence that they've made the efforts necessary. And you could say, other than for a cost differential of XYZ, could make it as specific as that. We could work out language.
And then, for instance,
we're just talking about the frontage, this property's frontage.
Right. We're not making them do Main Street,
No.
But
I thought I heard Cosmo say he wanted to do Main Street. Didn't you say that?
And Cedar.
He hates the poles. He said he hates the poles.
Come on.
and the actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the poles may not disappear, but the wires going between the poles may disappear. And also, if there's a pole that is essentially goes from like the corner of our property, but the next pole is at the corner of the next property, they may actually add a pole at the corner of our property and just bury the lines in between the two. So it's kind of, we don't want them to add poles, right? So it's kind of like, and that's why it's a little bit, it's tough to quantify in a resolution. And the only thing I would ask is that you trust me and my team that we're going to make an effort to beautify that corner and try to figure out something with that pole, because I really don't like it. I agree with you, but I don't want to add more poles, and I don't want to start a chain effect of burying of lines.
Understand that Con Ed doesn't let the developer bury the lines. Con Ed does the work, and Con Ed engineers it and designs it and figures out what'll work, and then they have you just pay for it.
Right.
Right. So, which can also run into timing problems, because I think we all know that Con Ed has timing problems.
Understatement right now.
So actually, that's a good picture to put on, right?
Yeah.
So I could actually, so in order for us to put, just because I know, because I've done this before, in order for our service not to be overhead, it has to come from a pole down, okay, down the pole and then underground. So it's going to be tough to eliminate that pole right at the corner if the main service is coming from across the street, what it looks like it is. And it looks like the wires that are going across our property there are only for street lights, I would say. And maybe to feed, I don't know, but the primary is definitely across the street. So in order to feed our property underground, which we would like, we would have to put a pole somewhere.
to go into the ground from.
From, right, exactly.
So I think, you know, in terms of a condition, you know, we're certainly willing to investigate and to include the building department at the appropriate time in that investigation. I just want to make sure that we're not obligated to do something that may be out of our control.
I'm just thinking out loud. Is there an outside consultant that could review the situation and offer an opinion, such as that is the main feeder across the street, so you would have to build another pole? Is there someone that specializes in this type of a situation? And I just throw that out to anybody because I have no
On
idea.
Ed, when we were doing
We can see them.
with the downtown work that we were doing, Vinny, this not you, Vinny, this other man, Vinny, who's a resident, works at Con Ed, and he was talking about how it was primarily all on the other side of the street. Like, that's not untrue. That's totally true.
What were you saying, Ed?
The high voltage is on the other side of the street.
Is on our side, Ed?
No, it's on the across the street.
Right, exactly.
Across the street. Street lighting is on your side.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we could probably, if we wanted to, propose putting some like a street light wire underground, but that's about it. You know, we're not going to get rid of that pole.
Yeah, what's interesting is there's not a lot of wires in front of our building on our side. It's mostly across the street.
Right. All right. So.
Okay, anybody else? Any other trustees have any other comments, suggestions, questions?
I had a question. So the unit 8 affordable unit now, it looked like that drawing that it has a roof deck. Is that correct?
I believe that both of the 2-bedroom affordables have some terrace space.
I believe all of them do.
Yeah.
Yes.
They all do. They all have roof deck space.
Even the studio.
Even the
unit.
studio.
Can I ask you a question about the buffer zone and the landscape plan? You put up a slide. That was obviously something in the joint meeting and in the public hearings that's come up as a real concern. One of the things that I believe we talked about at the last public meeting, the joint meeting, was to involve a consulting landscape architect. But the question was it going to be someone who was appointed by the village, or was it going to be somebody selected by the developer? Where do we stand with that? And can we get a little bit more detail on what's going on with the buffer?
My understanding was that the village was going to retain its own landscape architect to review what was submitted and review comments from Zion and from ours. So this is a plan that was prepared by our landscape architect, but we expect that it would be subject to review and approval by the village's landscape architect.
That was a suggestion, yes, at the special meeting.
On that point, I know for Zion Church that maple tree is a big concern, and I know that the owner has agreed to do everything during construction to preserve the tree. But have you had any discussions with your landscape architect, or if she's on now, like what else we can do to protect that?
So we actually had, and it's more of an arborist thing, actually. We had an arborist look at it, and we submitted a couple of months back, I think, an arborist report. Part of, if you recall, moving the wall away from the property line and moving the utilities away from the property line was to move any excavation further away from that tree in an effort to have less impact on the roots. Our arborist said, you know, the tree is not in the best of conditions, but this was a way of trying to help reduce potential impacts on it was to move the excavation away from it. I know I think there's been 3 arborists now involved in this.
Yeah. And have you guys done anything different with the screening between the building and Zion?
So I can let Susan speak. She's on. What she's tried to do here is really what our arborist found was that a lot of the what's there was non-native. So I think there's been an effort to instead replace it with a lot more native vegetation. Susan, do you want to maybe just walk through the plan a little bit?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I was brought on to look at just these issues and to do the landscape design for on the property, as well as look at the issues of what's going on between the Zion Church and the property. What I am proposing here is based on the arborist report for all the vegetation that is within this area, to replace any questionable healthy material and also non-native material that's in this small sort of sliver of land with native species. There's a mix of evergreen and deciduous shrubs that I'm proposing here. We see, and this is all subject, of course, to the process with the village landscape architect. We're proposing a couple of larger shrub / evergreen trees in sort of strategic locations. So there is a structural sort of separation. And also recognizing that there is one holly as well that's there that is in good condition that we're proposing to leave there as well. So there is replacement of any vegetation that would be, deemed not to stay within this area, and really looking at exclusively using native vegetation and doing it in a strategic manner to provide the best and the most attractive view from the Zion Church, as well as allowing some views from the new development.
This plan is relatively new. Susan's just been working on it. So we will be providing it to Zion Church. We haven't had a chance to do that yet. I saw it for the first time today. But we thought it was important to get her involved and ready to work with Zion and with the village's landscape architect.
I have a question and a recommendation. Can you describe the automated pedestrian alert system that is described on the letter that it was sent to us?
Sure, and I'm gonna hand it over to Christina in a minute because I know she's looked at these. There will be some, and there's a couple of different ones out there and available, different alternative ways to do it. But it will be a system that when there is a car coming out of the garage, there will be some visible notice to pedestrians. And you know what? I'm going to hand it over to Christina.
Well, I have a kind of experience with this on other projects where we don't have the specific system specified yet, but we're looking into electronic device that has it notices when people are coming across the sidewalk, and there is a visual symbol that comes up so that people can see if the driver can see if people are coming across the sidewalk, or people coming up to the driveway can see an alert of a light go off to see the car coming up. And there's also a sound device along with this type of system that will people can hear in case they don't see the light. And we also might back it up with a mirror in case the system goes down.
So Christina, it will have visual and sound, correct?
Yes.
And the other thing that I wanted to recommend is that I know that Zion Church has expressed concern in terms of any type of damage that the construction could cause to this structure that is, of course, in the borderline of historic for many of us. So I will recommend that there will be some type of walkthrough at least every week when there is significant excavation going on, in order for any type of challenges or issues be identified before they create a problem within the church. And I'm not sure if that's something that can be possible, but I think that it will be great to keep an eye on it and monitor this, so that at the end of the construction, if anything happens, we just don't have this big surprise that there was some type of damage done to the church due to the excavation.
So we've significantly reduced the excavation, the extent of the excavation, by bringing the parking up to the ground level. And maybe it was before I was involved, but I didn't remember hearing concerns about the actual church building.
Oh yeah, they had concerns, and they even requested that you will have some kind of security or guarantee of any type of damage done to the church. So I think that playing it safe and keeping an eye on it, regardless if there is significant excavation, at the end of the day, there's going to be construction and a lot of movement going around, and this church, aged significantly back as a structure. So I would recommend that there will be some kind of relationship with them in order for someone to be monitoring what is happening within your construction that possibly can be creating some type of damage to the church. I just want to play it safe to make sure that if there is any issues, is actually discovered in advance before it becomes a significant problem.
I would look to Ed or to the building department on what they would recommend on that.
And if we need to put vibration monitoring on the church facade, we can entertain that. It's kind of far away.
Yeah, this is something we do for blasting.
Right.
I mean, if you want to voluntarily assess their foundation.
I don't.
I
don't. What I would do is I could put some strain gauges on the building if we're worried about vibration, which again, it's far away, and what we could do is a pre-excavation survey to mark out any of the and anything that's wrong. No, not wrong, but any type of condition of the building, and then we could have strain gauges set by a third-party engineering company, which, like you said, we normally do during blast, or if we're doing something right adjacent to an historic property, like 2 feet away. But yeah, we could entertain that we could work that out during construction. I don't mind doing it because it kind of covers me too.
Yeah, if there was some heavy chipping, going to.
Right. If we find some rock, yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
Cosmo, thank you so much. I just do recognize that we have changed the design where there is going to be limited excavation, but it is a significant construction right next to this structure. And like you said, it's just playing it safe, making sure that we identify any challenges before we have a bigger one in our hands.
That's not a problem. We have the third party companies that do it. It's not something that it's uncommon, so we could do that. If we're doing any chipping or any type of hammer work, we could do that.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, if you could stop sharing your screen, I'd like to open it up for, thank you. Is Jen with us still? Where is Jen? There she is. Jen.
I'm here.
Is there, I see there's one person raising their hands. Is there
Yes.
any others?
Yes, people are starting to raise their hand. Hold on.
Again,
Michael, can you hear us?
please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and Jen is going to be very strict with that 3-minute rule.
Yep.
Okay, thank you again for allowing me to speak. My name is Michael Sabatino. I'm the former senior warden at Zion Church. First of all, I would just encourage you to read for all of you to read our council's letter that was sent to you today. And just a little hint, having served on the City Council of Yonkers for 8 years, dealing with Con Ed is a nightmare. Anyway, our main concern is the screening. And as you know, our application for being placed on the historic registry is coming forth on September 10th. And we anticipate that we will be approved. And we feel that the screening, it will not be dense enough. And I will alert you to a document we sent you today where we bracketed it for the frequently answered questions, where it says that government agencies, let me just move my screen here. Government agencies are responsible for avoiding or reducing the effects of projects on properties that are eligible for a listed on the registries. Listing raises awareness of the significance of the properties and helps to ensure the preservation and consideration is early on. So we are very concerned about the protection of our close. That is the area around the church. We want a much denser screening. We also got the impression from the letter that Ms. Whitehead said that Zion was cut out of the discussion about the choice of plantings. The letter didn't indicate that we would still be in that conversation. And as to Trustee Darosi, I thank you. I must have mispronounced your name, Maura. Thank you for that consideration, but the board might consider asking the developer to post a bond if there's any damage to the church property. So thank you again for allowing me to speak, and I would urge you to review those documents that were sent to you today.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yes, we have. Mary, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Mary Ford Sussman. I'm the current senior warden at Zion Episcopal Church. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'd like to underscore and expand on some points that Michael Sabatino just made. I'd like to thank the developer and his team for working with us to develop the space for the buffer zone that is now being added to the site plan, and for also working so hard to create reduction of the building. I really much appreciate that. However, the screening, I still want to speak to the screening because it was very clear at the presentation in July 21st and tonight when you showed photographs of the existing screening on Zion and what the developers plan had proposed, that there's a great disparity there. And I'm not sure that there's an understanding completely here that one of the things that we really value in that screening is that it helps us maintain our sanctuary space. Zion has been around for at least 100 years, which that has been there for 100 years, I'm sure, maybe closer to 200 years. It has been providing that sanctuary space for not only congregants, but community. I'd like to draw attention to the Village Code 300-49, which places responsibility on the village governing boards to ensure that there are reasonable and necessary transitions between uses. And I appreciate Trustee Taylor bringing that up tonight, and Trustee, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name, Darosi, again, about the protection for the church. But it's not, those plantings were very lovely, but they don't really help us maintain that sense of sanctuary space. So that we would really ask that the board provide, ensure that the sanctuary space is protected. by allowing in the site plan approval that there is adequate dense and tall screening for Zion Church property, and also that Zion has a voice in determining what those plantings would be so that the screening will help to maintain that sanctuary space. Of course, the nomination or the eligibility to be nominated to the National Register of Historic Places kind of brings this up, that it places upon governing agencies to help maintain not protection only of the buildings, but the nature of the use of the space. And if there were ever differences between Zion use and the use of Cedar Commons, no matter how wonderful it is, these are two different uses. So we really ask you to, within that site plan, really.
Excuse me? It's
Thank
been
you very
3
much.
minutes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we have one more person. Oh, two more people. Susan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I unmuted myself. How's that doing?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm on? Okay, super. Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. The matter of parking and traffic on Cedar Street has been topical at tonight's meeting, and I respectfully request that I address the ongoing problems of double parking and Zoom cat on jaywalking on Cedar and Main Streets. Those of us who travel, whoops, can you hear me still? Those of us who travel on those two streets regularly must endure constant disruption because people are double parked in order to easily drop off and retrieve children, dogs, laundry, pizza, and so forth. Double parking engenders people dashing between cars and jaywalking to get to their destination, creating further havoc. There is no doubt that these drivers are of the mind that it is better to inconvenience others than convenience themselves. The choice we now have is either to wait, not knowing how long a vehicle will be left unattended, or to drive over the double yellow line, clearly committing a motor vehicle infraction and possibly causing an accident. Buses have no such recourse, and I have no idea how disconcerting it must be for both the drivers and their passengers to have to endure this. Abiding by our existing motor vehicle code and civil codes would make the problem go away. Accommodations could be made so that merchants would not be financially impacted. And as a matter of fact, the efforts that they made toward valet parking seem to mitigate this problem. So here is where you, the Board of Trustees, comes in. Please make sure these regulations are adhered to. Please direct the police to enforce these codes. This action would mitigate the seething animosity we have toward these people and make Dobbs Ferry a more pleasant place to live. Thank you for your consideration. Good evening.
Can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Whoops, I told you, didn't I? Susan Roberts, 100 Cedar Street.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have one more. Leslie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I'm Leslie Walter, 40 Clinton Avenue. The board is very clear about my feelings about squeezing 23 more cars into a private parking lot in the heart of congested Cedar Street. I was disappointed to hear the developer doesn't want to open up that private parking spot even a bit to the public. And I thoroughly agree with the former speaker about the double parking problems on Cedar. Is it possible to dedicate one street space in front of the proposed new building as a signed loading zone? I know it's an unfortunate loss of parking, but double parking in that location, I think, is very dangerous to drivers. Is that possible?
Just to let the board know that myself and the chief of police have been working on a proposal for loading zones in the downtown that we're planning to bring to you in September. And we have identified locations that would work.
Thanks, Ed.
Is there anybody else, Jen?
That's all we have.
Okay. I want to thank the applicant. You've been very responsive. I don't know how the board feels about this. Seems that the shrubbery, the cover, the Zion wants to be sure that they are properly screened, and I think that's the main concern that we should address. But I don't know if we need to keep the public hearing open any longer. My feeling is that we can close the public hearing, but I also just want to know how the board feels, if they need any more information, or if they have any questions, or does the board want to think about this before we go forward? So what is everybody thinking?
I think you were going to make, if you were going to move forward, you were going to make a condition of approval would be that their architect needs, landscape architect needs to produce a plan to the satisfaction of the consulting landscape architect that you have retained. So the screening question will be addressed directly, landscape architect to landscape architect at this point. And if the developer and the church want a private agreement to maintain landscaping on anything other than the developer's property, that that has to happen sort of outside of your approval. It can be encouraged, and they do seem to have a good communication going right now. So you can condition anything on this approval, to be done with your landscape architect, who's the expert.
Larry, are you ready to move forward on this? Do you want time to think about it?
I feel like I know what I'm thinking overall with the project, but the open-ended question, I think, is really, sorting out what is, an acceptable balance between Zion and the developer for this buffer zone. And I would be more comfortable moving forward, knowing that there's been progress that's been made in terms of resolving that, rather than us setting it as a condition and then it having to be, sort of arbitrated one way or another afterwards. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it procedurally, or whether it really makes any difference. But to me, that's the biggest, question in my mind is and the two sides seem to be working together better, which is hopefully a sign that it can progress.
Nicole, do you think you need any more information on this, or you want what? How do you feel?
No, but I did forget a question that I had written down prior about that point about the historical designation. And maybe it's for Laura Lee, like what are our obligations in approving a project adjacent to something that's pending historic designation? And are we comporting with that or have any concerns there?
I think as the Zion representatives indicated tonight, that you have an affirmative obligation to look at the impact, which you are doing. This project has morphed in significant ways as a result of the sensitivity to the needs of the adjacent property owners. So you have met that obligation at this point. You have a continuing obligation to do that, and part of this question of the buffer on the applicant's property, combined with that existing screening on Zion's property, is part of the discussion and certainly part of the consideration. It isn't something that you've ignored to this point, clearly.
Trustee Casal, do you need any more information? Do you have any more questions? Are you ready to move forward on this?
I'm pretty close to moving forward on this. I understand. For me, again, the issue is only, making sure that the two parties are comfortable with the screening that's being provided. I also want to make sure that nothing unreasonable, that there aren't situations where unreasonable demands are made on either side about the screening. So I would like to see the screening, but if it's not an absolute must.
Okay. Trustee DeRozzi?
I agree with everything that Donna said, but I do feel that we have invested a lot of time in this, and I think it's time for us to make a decision and move forward.
Yeah. Trustee now?
If this is my last shot at talking about the fourth floor, then I'm going to take it. I
We're
mean,
not going to actually vote tonight, but yes. you
I
can
know, but this is the last, like, we would have to go back to a different plan if it was going to be approved as 3 stories. So I appreciate all the work that's been done. I mean, it's been a pleasure working with the developer and Christina Griffin and the whole team. And I think it's a gorgeous project. And I think it would do a lot of things to benefit the downtown and our tax base and walkability, sustainability, all of those things. But I do think that the 4th floor is not meeting the requirements as outlined in our code. That flexibility is within our power if we determine a project will bring residential diversity and affordability to the downtown. We should be working toward those goals with development in the village for sure, but not in a way that reshapes our downtown for the future. Cedar Street currently has many 1-story fronts. So this will be a major change regardless when it's a 3 or 4 stories. And I don't want to begin a trend of 4-story buildings on Cedar with such a minimal addition of affordable units, especially when the remaining units will be priced similarly to 75 Main as like luxury units. I would have been on board for this project as a 3-story building, but I do not support it with a 4th story, even if it's set back. Cedar should be able to stay with a 3-story max, considering its history and its current status as mainly 1-story fronts. And I just want to encourage all of you to picture Cedar Street, which I could screen share because I have it on my screen. It's primarily 1-story and it's low, and we're already going to be going to 3. And now we're going to be allowing 4 and potentially the future encroaching in with 4 and other buildings.
So that's a no.
I mean, I'm ready to vote if you want to vote on 4 stories, but I really wish we could just go back to the 3-story one.
Trustee Patino?
I'm ready to move forward. I believe that postponing for the resolution of the landscape is actually a mistake. I think that that if you have the right landscape architect, which I think this team does, and that is reviewed and mediated by the village's landscape architect, that process could go on for some time. I think we're all in agreement that we would like to see the right kind of screening for the sake of maintaining that buffer and that sanctuary space for Zion. And I think with that in mind, that some compromise goal can be achieved for this project. So I'm ready to move ahead on that. I also think that this 4-story building is a better, stronger project for the downtown from an ecological standpoint, from a disruption standpoint, and also I think that that the overall building appearance and mass from the street is actually a bit smaller than it was before. So while it is a 4-story, it does make sense with the changing topography in the way that sort of best practices would indicate. So I think it's a project that I'd like to move forward on.
All right, so it sounds like everybody's ready to move forward, but I just want to clarify. So, Larry, how do you feel about the project? And
I'm listen, hearing everybody talking about this, the way that we can have put this in as a stronger condition, I'm comfortable closing the hearing, and then we just have to figure out how to word a resolution to make sure that the appropriate conditions are all considered.
And Trustee Sullivan, how do you feel about the project itself and those conditions?
I think that the resolution has to, in the public record, which I guess when we vote, has to be really clear about if we approve it, why we're approving it in accordance with our code under the, I don't know the number section, but the reasons in the code that allow us to do a 4th story here. And then there's I mean, I wrote down like at least 8 conditions that have been I think all of which have been mentioned today, some of which have not been fully discussed, that would have to be a part of any approval, including the rec fee, a pile-up. And I do think that the planning board had recommended certain bonds be in place. And so we need to look carefully at that. And they had recommended some stuff with the Mazer recommendations from 19, and we should probably just check with them if those still stand after our joint meeting, or if there's something new that we should be including vis-a-vis that. So I just want to make sure that when we draft any resolution moving the project forward as is, that it has those conditions in it. There's more that I didn't say on the record, just so we're clear.
Trustee Darazi, how do you feel about that? The project as it is?
I agree with Nicole. There are some things that still we should retouch, but I do agree with Larry, and I think that we should close the public hearing and consider moving the process forward.
Okay. And Don, I just want to check with you.
I'm ready to move it forward.
Okay. So,
And talking about damaging of buildings, and I'm sure there are bonds and all that, but we also have to remember theater is next to this building, and that's kind of an important structure in our downtown as well. So if there's going to be a bond for Zion, can we get a bond for the theater?
What kind of a bond? I think we can provide the same kind of protections that we discussed for the church for during construction.
That's fine. I just thought when we were talking about, the street, I just realized that's pretty historic, that theater there. And
it's historic in my life.
Exactly. So no. So I just wanted to put that into the record, that that's also a building that we I'm sure you'll take care of it, but I just wanted to point that out.
I saw Jaws there.
So in light of how everyone feels, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public hearing and that a resolution is prepared and subject to the amendments that everyone has mentioned and review is prepared, and then we can put it on the next Board of Trustee regular meeting. I don't even know the date of the next meeting. That will be September. Jen, help me.
I'm looking, hold on.
Laura, you're muted. Laura,
Sorry, September 8th.
8. I'm trying to hold up my hand.
I couldn't get to the calendar quick enough.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there anybody? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yeah.
Or the night.
And the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, I
Wish we were done.
Trustee Nell, did you vote in favor? I'm sorry if I didn't. I'm sorry. So that passes 6-1. I apologize.
To close the public hearing.
No, I think Christy voted in favor of moving forward with closing the public hearing. No, Christy? That's what we were voting on.
Sure, yeah.
That was the motion.
I'd like to keep it open and do 3 stories, but all right.
All right, well, you don't have, you could do it. No, I wasn't sure what you did.
Yeah, just so we're clear, then was that unanimous to close the public hearing and call for a resolution, or was it 6-1?
6-1.
Okay, thank you. Just helping out Ms. Reaper.
I'm sorry, Trustee Nell. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 3, a public hearing, a continuation of a public hearing for review of the application of 100 Main Street. We've been advised by the applicant that the 3D model is not ready. So I'm going to continue this public hearing until September 8th. Is that what we? Okay, 6:30.
Is there anything that we need to talk about based on the submission that he did give us that we would add the things that we?
I believe I'd have to open the public hearing if we discuss it. Is that correct? So
Yeah, if are you simply going to make a motion to adjourn the public hearing to the 8th?
Right.
But if you want to take any time to talk substantive, then you'll need to open the hearing tonight and then adjourn to the 8th.
I mean, just there wasn't anything, Chrissy. There was just a letter, no actual drawings that would represent any changes, so that nothing new to look at, really.
Right. So that means that what we're looking at next time is the same plan, but with a 3D model. And
I don't know. Is that
right, Ed?
That's actually what you asked him to produce for tonight.
It's not a 3D model, it's a virtual 3D, just like you saw for 41. But yes, hasn't changed his design.
Okay, so is there a motion to continue that public hearing? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor? It passes unanimously. Three hours in, and we're at courtesy of the floor.
Record.
Is there anybody who wants to speak at courtesy of the floor?
I think you were going for longest meeting ever, Vinny.
Well, I think I've also had the shortest meeting ever. So
At least we're at home.
We have to keep voting for the Guinness Book of World Records.
Considering that your first meeting was postponed by a snowstorm.
Oh, I should have filibustered or something for the third floor. Just kept talking until you guys had to
get the hook.
We do have one person with their hand raised for courtesy of the floor.
Again, please abide by the 3-minute rule.
If you can hear us, can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Yes, this is Cyrus Mendobi and Roya Salmasian at 27 Main Street, and we will try and keep this as brief as possible. Mayor Rosilio, Mr. Manley, members of the board, we have been trying to change the use of the basement at our property at 27 Main Street from commercial to residential. We have gone through the application process. We have all the approvals besides the recreational fee that we have appealed to the zoning board for their recommendation, but they have sent the determination of the recreational fee and application of the recreational fee to the Board of Trustees. We've sent letters, we've sent emails, and there has been no response. Really, we would just like the opportunity to be heard and for the Board of Trustees to make their determination.
Okay, I'm going to refer this to the attorney. Laura Lee, you want to comment?
I haven't seen materials on this, so I was starting to discuss this with Ed earlier today to talk about the code provision in question and to see if there was a way for you to entertain a waiver. But I don't have the backup materials, so it would be helpful for me to see those in advance, and then I'd be able to advise you whether you could proceed. Is it true that the zoning board took no action, or did they conduct a hearing and determine to deny your request?
Yeah, there was a hearing on June 10th of last month, and they, I guess they
didn't make any determination. They referred it to the Board of Trustees.
What the zoning board said was they found no reason to, it was a request for a interpretation of the building inspector's determination that the code required a rec fee. Zoning board found no reason to overturn the building inspector's decision by code.
Okay.
They then sort of offline suggested that the applicant ask the Board of Trustees. It would be the determination of the of our council whether the Board of Trustees can entertain this.
Right, that's the question, is whether you have the authority to entertain a request if the zoning board has officially upheld the building inspector's determination. Usually an appeal from a zoning board determination is that you don't get a second bite by coming to the Board of Trustees. So I just need to review with Mr. Manley the provisions and perhaps take a glance at that zoning board determination, and then I'd be in a better position to advise you. But it's not a common thing for a second appeal to be made once an appeal to a zoning board for an interpretation is definitive. The appeal from the zoning board is not to the village board.
Okay, yeah, but again, the code does provide the Board of Trustees to make any adjustments to the fees. And we appreciate that consideration. Also, the code as it stands about the recreational fee is ambiguous based off of the 2010 census. The building did have 8 original units in the 2010 census. That's the recreational fees were, you know.
I don't think this is appropriate for the courtesy of the floor. So
Yeah,
we'll
I would like to see your argument, and I would like to see the zoning board's resolution before I can advise the board whether they can proceed. It's an unusual procedural issue for a zoning board to have reached a final determination and for you to then take that to the village board of trustees. The avenue for challenging a final determination of the zoning board is to Supreme Court. So I just want to see where in the code we can move forward. But if they've determined it isn't ambiguous, they've determined and upheld the building inspector's determination, then I don't see an avenue, but I'm willing to take a look at what the argument is to get the avenue. But I haven't seen.
So let's do that, and you'll be take care of this offline, and we'll go forward.
Yeah, if I could get the materials, that would be good. Great.
And if you could, how would we transmit the materials for your review?
I would submit them to the clerk, to Ms. Draper directly, and she can be sure to get them to me.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
And a copy of the zoning board denial would be helpful too.
But we didn't receive nothing.
Well, yeah, we didn't, again, we'll submit all the relevant paperwork, but again, the zoning board, you know, we don't have any documentation from there. So again,
the clerk would have the minutes.
And we, you know,
It was wonderful.
enjoy your the rest of your evening. I see that you have a lot of things on the agenda and want to keep this as brief as possible.
Thank you.
Again, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get to matters requiring action. This is item number 1, to consider a motion to appoint Ms. Sue Galloway as Chair of the Conservation Advisory Board. Donna, do you have anything that you'd like to shed light on regarding this?
Sue's been incredible the past couple of months since she's joined the board. She hasn't been on the board that long, but she's already spearheaded so many different initiatives for the CAB. She's very energetic. She's very smart. She's very well versed in conservation and ecological things, and I think she'll be a great head.
Is there a motion to approve Sue Galloway? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Item number 2, consider a motion to add Mr. William Mason Miller as a member of the Ogden Engine Company and to have his name placed onto the active insurance rolls. We have a letter dated July 20th, 2020 from the fire department asking us, he said, advising that he was elected to the Ogden Engine Company. So is there a motion to add Mr. William Mason? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Item number 3, consider a motion to approve audits numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 for August 2020 as recommended by the village treasurer. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
No, unless there's any questions.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Sure.
There's one that's a website redesign. I just want to know what that was for.
For the library.
And then the ferryman, we pay for postage and printing on that.
The Historical Society has a amount in our budget every year, and that's part of that budget line.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, a second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Action item number 4, consider a resolution authorizing a tax certiorari settlement with petitioner Jerkan Realty Associates for property located at 391 Broadway for an amount of $2,857.29. Jeff, can you explain this?
Yeah, this is was negotiated by Village's tax attorney Joe Danko, and we need to approve it in order to finalize this settlement.
This covers 2 years of taxes, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Agenda item number 5, consider a resolution authorizing tax certiorari settlement with petitioner Vin Nguyen for property located at 30 Palisade Street for an amount of $2,568.24. Again, Jeff, this looks like it covers a 2-year tax period.
Correct.
Again, same situation.
Same situation.
Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Agenda item number 6, consider a motion to approve a disability benefit payout from the Dobbs-Ferry Volunteer Fire Department Service Award Program for Mr. James Walsh, as recommended by Fire Chief Ed Marin. And I know we received a letter from Ed Marin dated August 4th, 2020. There is a letter dated July 30th, 2020 from PenFlex Inc., which is a service award program, a specialist who have reviewed the application for disability submitted by Mr. Walsh, and it's on their recommendation that the disability award be approved. The fire department has also indicated that it should be approved. Jim has served the department for over 45 years. And I think the payout is equal to $65,758.55. Is there a motion? Trustee Cassell, second. Trustee Sullivan, any discussion? All in favor? That passes unanimously. Item number 7, consider a resolution to adopt revised retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records. We received a lot of backup information on this. Maybe Liz, you want to speak to this a little bit?
Certainly. The current schedule that was adopted by the board years ago is called the MU1 schedule. The New York State Archives has revised that and is now calling it the LGS-1 retention schedule. We have to adopt it. We don't really have a choice. We cannot offer any amendments to the document that was in your packet. That's, a state document. So it's just at this point a matter of procedure that we have to adopt this schedule, and just so everybody knows, it just basically is a guide as to how long we're obligated to keep certain village records in our before destroying them. So
Thank you, Liz. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, consider a motion to extend the concrete sidewalk, concrete curbing, and blacktop repair contract with Pat Paving until May 31st, 2021. I know we have a memo from Jennifer Dorman dated July 10th, 2020, which describes the cost. Ed, do you want to speak to this, or is Jennifer speaking about it?
Oh, these are bids for service work that we give out every year. And, you know, two people have won the bid. So it's just procedural.
Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor? That passes. Item number 9, which is along the same track, is consider a motion to extend the equipment rental and labor rates contract with Tom Bucci Excavating until May 31st, 2021. Ed, I'm assuming it's the same thing?
Yes, it is. Just different work.
Is there a motion? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Agenda item number 10, consider a request from Assistant Fire Chief William Osborne to declare the fire chief's 2012 Chevrolet Suburban as surplus equipment. We have a memorandum dated July 10th, 2020 from Assistant Fire Chief William Osborne explaining the situation. Jeff, can you comment on this?
Sure. They are looking to replace a chief's vehicle. You can see in our next resolution, and selling this vehicle and the 2009 vehicle that you approved previously. That $55,000 truck is going to cost the village about $15,000 in total.
Assuming that truck has to be replaced, it's 2012. We have a schedule of when we try to replace equipment.
Yeah, we're trying to speed up the replacement to get better value out of the vehicles, and you know this is pretty good money for a 2012.
Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Nell, all in favor? That passes unanimously. That takes us to agenda item number 11. Consider a motion to authorize the purchase of a 2020 Chevrolet Tahoe in the amount of $55,265.37, which piggybacks off the City of Troy's bid. And we have a letter from the City of Troy dated August 16th, which explains the situation. So maybe Jeff, you could just talk about how that works.
Yeah, a number of years ago, the board approved allowing the departments to use piggybacking, which is another municipality goes out and gets a bid. They do all the same bidding requirements that we would do in-house if we were to go out for bid ourselves. And if the vendor allows us to use that bid, we can use that bid.
Okay. Is there a motion for this? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Agenda item number 12, consider a motion to authorize the police chief to sign an IMA with the County of Westchester for implementation of a system called Westchester County Repository for Integrated Criminalistic Information to allow for the electronic transmission and storage of criminal records and police blotter information. We have a memorandum from the chief. We have the copy of the IMA, I believe, and I know the chief is on the phone. So Chief, can you explain this? Are you talking, Rick?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you gave me approval. I updated the live scan machine that we have in our booking area that communicates with the Westchester County. They hold the license. So basically it just enables us to continue utilizing the county as the nexus when we arrest people as they are booked and fingerprinted. That's how we get the information back.
Okay, and it's outlined with the agreements and memorandum that's been previously submitted, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, this is just to update because the old machine has gone end of life. So this was an updated agreement to replace, the superseding agreement that the village had with the county.
Okay, is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee DeRozzi. All in favor? That passes. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for sticking around.
No problem. Everybody have a great night.
You too. Item number 13, consider a motion to authorize the village administrator to sign the renewal of the annual service agreement with Civic Plus for an annual cost of $2,887.50. Ed, will you speak on this, or will Liz? I don't remember.
This is the renewal of the agreement with our web host. So it's the village website.
Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor?
Real quick, Ed, is Municity, that doesn't do web hosting, right?
No, Unicity is our permitting software.
Right. So I just want to make sure there's no benefit in potentially combining the hosting, because that's not something they do.
No, they don't do that.
Okay. Ready, set, vote.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Item number 14 is to consider a motion to approve a request from the village clerk, who also is our 2020 census liaison, to review location placement and number of signs for 2020 census on village property. I know, Liz, you prepared a very detailed memo with pictures, and I want to thank you, first of all, for your efforts. Thanks to your efforts, I think we've passed to 2010. Is that correct? Liz?
Yes. Yeah, in 2010, we were at 69.1%. We're currently at 69.6%, so we're 0.5% above and shooting to go higher than that. So we do, unfortunately, the current Trump administration cut back the time for the responses from October 31st to September 30th. So we're down to 50 days. So I'm getting more ambitious than I was already. So I'd much appreciate if the board would consider my proposal for signage. I did cut it down from 60 signs to 30. So
thank you.
But if there's any, if you'd like that cut back more, let me know which locations, and, certainly do that.
So how does the board feel about it? She has, as you may have looked at the packet, you've seen, she has 30 signs, and she has very detailed pictures of where she plans to put them. So if we're okay with that, we could approve it. If we want to limit it further, we could limit it further, but Liz has done a lot of work on this. So are we okay on this? Well, first of all, let me make the motion. So is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Now. Now let's have the discussion about whether we want to have the 30 signs, 60 signs, or no signs.
I think that the census is really important for our village, and the more that we can get over 70, 75%. So I'm totally fine with the number of signs, even though it's probably inordinate, but the more people we can hit, especially in COVID, because people are probably going out less. So the more neighborhoods we hit, the better.
I agree.
Me too.
Yep.
And I just also, sorry. I just wanted to say, I think Liz has done an outstanding job, working up the census and keeping us updated. So thank you.
So it sounds like everyone's in favor. Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I did. First off, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. It's very kind. In my memo was written prior to this, the amendment in the cutoff date. So the signs would be up through September 30th, not through October 31st.
Okay. So we have the motion. Are we all in favor? If you're in favor, aye. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Good luck, Liz.
Thank you.
If you have 30 additional signs, would you want to make them available for private placement if people first come, first serve wanted to put them on their property.
I can put one in front of my house.
But I'm just suggesting if you have them and you have this tight deadline, it might be beneficial to offer them in your newsletter this week if people want to pick up a sign for their private property.
So this board would also have to approve the
Never
placement
mind.
of signs on private property,
Never
because that's also against code.
Really? Because of the
Are there political signs?
Yeah, we had
An exception for political signs. If their signs are already made, I personally would be okay with it because I think the more exposure we have, the better, but they should come down, you know, as possible.
That was actually mentioned in my memo. And then if the board would, you know, perhaps amend that motion to include the placement on private property, I would maintain a listing of who they are issued to. So we do have that on record.
Okay, we could amend, we have to then make a new motion with that new amendment to it. And is there a motion for that? Trustee Nell, second trustee Cassell, all in favor of, okay, passed? Action item number 15, consider a motion to declare the police department's old Ritchie live scan equipment as surplus as recommended by Police Chief Caveira. We have a memo dated August 4th, 2020, in which he's laid that all out and explained it. So is there a motion to declare it as surplus? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? And that passes. Item number 16, referral from the building official for the board to review a request to reconstruct retaining walls and steps on the village right-of-way for 58 Colonial Avenue. We have, I believe, a letter from Gotham dated August 3rd, which explains the situation. And Ed, maybe you want to shed some light on this?
So one of the building inspectors, while passing by, saw some construction that did not have a permit at this location. And when he stopped and checked it out, it seemed they were rebuilding retaining walls, and they were on the village right of way, which of course, as you know, only you could give permission for somebody to build on the right of way. So the applicant wants to put them right back where they were. We try to get them back onto the property line when people redo them, because before there were codes, you know, people did whatever they wanted. But I would suggest that you could send this down to the planning board and have them and our consulting engineer look at what's feasible to move back onto the property line and what is not really engineering feasible, and allow that which has to remain to stay on the village property, and that which can move back be done so.
So I would just gonna be making a motion to refer this to the planning board.
I would recommend that, yes.
With the assistance of your engineer, you could minimize the impact, if not all the way from the right of way. And then once you have a plan and an as-built, then providing for a license agreement for continuing maintenance and setting forth the obligation certainly would be more than appropriate.
Okay. Is there a motion to refer this to the planning board as outlined by Mr. Manley and the village attorney? Deputy Mayor Cassell, second by Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, I would just like to go over the trustee liaison reports regarding number 1, the Conservation Advisory Board.
Okay, CAB, we're looking at potential new members. They came to a Zoom meeting that we had, and they're terrific people, so I certainly hope that they will submit applications. Conservation Advisory Board is continuing to work with Westchester County on an overlay for our open space. Additionally, they are working with the Sawmill River Coalition, Groundworks, the Village, and Sustainable, looking at ways to improve Chauncey Park, the new park down by Rivertown Square. So they're in the process of working on that.
Thank you, Donna. And you're also the next one is the traffic committee.
Sure, why not? The traffic committee is working with the village. Recently, we went to look at some pedestrian issues on Ashford Avenue and on Price Street. So that's the big thing. A lot of the projects are being held off until after the COVID. Again, we were discussing the unbundled parking, and we'll continue to do that with maybe creating some sort of a policy for the village on unbundled parking in the future.
Okay, AHRB.
The main thing I think that will be coming to us, Ed, can you help me with this? Rivertown Square has a whole big signage package that they're coming to us next with. And it involves a lot of painting and some directional signage. And so I know they had emailed Ed and I and Dan asking what they were supposed to bring. And I had warned them that we were going to want to know what was in the site plan approval from back in the day to know what we're comparing this to and how it's different.
So pretty much what was approved is what's there. So what this is a change to site plan, and I've tried to explain to them multiple times that the awnings and things on the building are procedural for AHRB, but all of the things that are disconnected or freestanding are part of a site plan change. So what they have to do, everything has to be reviewed by the AHRB, everything that they plan to change. But those items that are freestanding and also on the public right of way possibly need to come to the Board of Trustees, and they haven't got me that complete site plan application yet to put before you.
Gotcha. I mean, everything they're doing is they're trying to improve navigation when you're in there. And one of the main sticking points with the board was this one sign that was right by the Chelsea Square sign, kind of by where you entered a Starbucks. But the rest of it, the boards were agreeing that it was all helping. So we'll see when that comes, but that's the major thing that will be coming our way from them.
Okay, thank you.
Just very quickly, so they gave up the idea that they originally presented to put all those flags on the public right of way where they wanted to,
There's no flags in it. There's like those, what are those called on the building?
Well, there were sale banners all around the front of the retaining wall for Chipotle, which I think the AHRB already talked them out of, which would require your approval because that's a freestanding banner and had nothing to do with, directional signage. Is just catching people's eye.
Yeah.
And, they're not quite usually thought of as attractive.
Thank you.
Sustainability Task Force?
Yeah, so just very quickly, sustainability, there are two main things that they have going on. One is they're working with the village staff, hopefully lightly using resources, but following through on an energy audit of the buildings that are owned and operated by the village in order to continue to follow through on the certification process. The second thing that sustainability is going to be focused on as we go into the fall and this COVID thing continues is to find ways to work with other entities around the village to continue to support the food bank at South Church, which apparently has seen overwhelming demand. And one of the things that we may be asked to do, to the extent that any of us have connections with some of the organizations in town, like Mercy College, like any of the schools, to be able to try and find some combination of volunteers and perhaps say fundraising, if that would be something as a social service that Masters would want to take on. They don't have those connections, but to the extent that we have an ongoing dialogue with those organizations, they may be seeking our help.
Okay. Planning board, I think that's back to you, Donna.
Yeah, due to the power outage, I didn't have power or internet on Thursday, so I did not participate in the planning board meeting itself. But I believe it is online, so if anybody's interested, they can go look at it. I do know, as far as this board's concerned, that they are still looking at making suggestions for the NDR2 zone, revisions to that, which I believe is at the end of the meeting at the planning board meeting. So if people want to check that out, it's online.
There was a lot of headway made towards those zoning, potential zoning changes.
Okay. Parks and Rec. Cole.
So I think that the power came back today, this afternoon, but we need assistance with getting everything like back up and running so the filtration's working properly. So they're gonna be working on that tomorrow, and fingers crossed that the pool will be able to reopen on Thursday. I know that they did max out their swim lessons and something else I can't recall right now. But anyway, so hopefully we'll be able to get the pool back, because that's a shame. And then the other issue that came up is permit uses for the waterfront park and Gould Park, mostly for sport groups like River Towns United and the softball group. They were all small groups, I want to say 12 or less, and children with a couple of adults. And the rec commission was in favor of allowing those limited type of events if they filled out the New York Forward Plan. And I know like Britannia United provide their COVID plan. There are certain other conditions, but I think that we as a board need to decide during COVID what we want to do with our parks about opening them up and what kinds of events and sizes of them and population and restrictions we want to put around that. So we should probably figure that out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that before we give permits to people playing sports in our parks. Maybe we can come up with, I mean, is the park, do they have a recommendation? Do they have a plan in place for us to look at, or no?
They made recommendations for the requests that they had. So like, I know like for the soccer one, it was, 12 kids or less. They weren't going to play games. They were only going to be doing like individual activities in their own designated space. No, they didn't want any, they wanted the spectators limited, so no spectators. It would just be the coaches. And then they wanted to limit to one group at a time. So like if there's soccer at Gould Park, like Girls on the Run had also asked for space because they didn't know if they'd be able to use the school. So they only wanted to have one group using the park at one time. So limiting it that way. And like I said, they had to fill out the New York Forward Plan. And I know one of the groups had given their own COVID guidelines about masks and social distance and all the stuff that they were put in. But if you want me to have a proper referral, I can have Kendra work one up, I guess. Or Ed can.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, we need to think about how many people we allow. So everything needs to maintain social distancing. So any permits that come through should explain how they're going to abide by that.
Yeah. All right, so let's have them come up with a plan, and then we can weigh in on it, because we only allow a certain number of people. We only allow people walking a certain way in one direction. So I don't want, to allow stuff that has more interactive than that for the general public may be a problem. So let's come up with a plan and we can look at it. Okay, Liz, I don't see the minutes, so maybe I missed that, but we can definitely do that next week, next meeting. Did I miss it?
No, sir, it's not on.
Okay, good. So, can I have, Laura Lee, you want to say something?
And I just remind you, there's no lawful reason to have to adopt minutes, but I appreciate that you do review them, which is great. Thank you.
This is not a knock on anyone, but I'm an old dog. I go through all those. It's been since 2011, I think. So, is there a motion to close this 3.5-hour meeting? Trustee Sullivan, second Trustee Taylor, Trustee Nell. You want to filibuster anymore? No.
I'm going to vote against closing the meeting. 6-1.
I am just amazed that in the beginning of the meeting, I was enjoying the background that Larry had with
That's
this
what I was thinking.
light that he was coming through, and it's so dark now.
Now he's out there with like coyotes and stuff.
The sun went down. What am I supposed to do?
We may want to consider having 2 meetings in August and July instead of one long one, but we can talk about that some other time. So I know we have a motion. I know someone seconded. Are we all in favor? Good night, everybody, and stay safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.